All right, what's going on? Drive time Tuesday afternoon, about 9 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. Winter has come calling. It is rainy. It is snowy. It is cold here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. A lot of snow up on the East Bench, ton of snow up in the mountains. Good for the snow bros. Always want to watch out for the snow bros. Getting some cheddar. Nope, I'm not going to do the snow bro impersonation today. It's too early for that. It is the first storm of the year, at least down in the benches when you're kind of shoveling the walks a little bit. But as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. That's Porter Larson behind the glass on this Tuesday afternoon. Your weekend pro football came to a close last night with a little Monday Night Football. The Dolphins took care of the Rams. And now we're high speed ahead to Week 11, which still feels pretty crazy. Down the stretch for your fantasy football seasons. You guys in playoff position? Well, if you're not, you better start getting to it. Coming up Thursday night, it's going to be the Commanders and the Eagles from Lincoln Financial Field. Jaden Daniels taking on Jalen Hurts. Right now, Philly a 3.5-point favorite. We're going to do a little pro football on the show today. Look back on the week that was and look ahead to the week that will be on Tuesdays of the week, at least not our show. We still kind of exist in the space of what has happened, what just happened, as opposed to what's coming up, what happens next. So, do a little more Utah BYU rivalry game. I know a lot of people probably tired of it. Interested to hear Coach Witt tonight on the Coach's Show right after we say goodnight at 6 o'clock. Kyle looked and sounded very tired yesterday on a Monday morning, which you would expect. Kalani Sitake, on the other hand, for his media availability, very excited about what could be next for his team. Now, tonight will be the second reveal of the CFP poll. Where will BYU land? They're 7 in the AP, and as of now, they're 9 in the college football poll. I would imagine they move up. Georgia loses. Miami loses. BYU is one of 4 undefeated teams left, and I believe one of 3 of P4 teams that are undefeated. Oregon, Indiana, and Brigham Young, the 3 undefeated teams. I believe Army is the 4th. So I would imagine they're going to move up tonight. Maybe 7 would be my guess. I know BYU fans believe they should be higher, but that's just kind of the deal with that fan base. So you pat them on the head, say, take care, truck along, put your shoulder to the wheel. So we'll find out tonight where BYU lands in the second iteration of the CFP poll, and, of course, bring that to you as it comes to us. So, of course, it's a big day. Everyone very excited. You can feel the buzz in the market as tonight is the triumphant return/debut of the NBA Cup. That's right. The Phoenix Suns are in town to take on the Utah Jazz. Kevin Durant will not play as he has a calf injury. But this is NBA Cup group play, guys. I know you've been waiting for it for a while. It was called the play-in tournament a year ago. The Emirates NBA Cup. It's kind of like a soccer European midseason tournament to try to give the players more motivation to play during the regular season, which is just going so well. Way to go. Knock that out of the park. NBA ratings are in the toilet right now. A lot of that is probably because we are simply entrenched in football, both college and pro. But we'll do some pro basketball on the show tonight. We're going to do some college basketball on the show as well, as we're kind of making our way into college basketball season. It's already started. And we'll do some Utah women's hoops with Lynn Roberts today on the show. The Utah men in action tonight against Queens College, baby. That's right. So a lot of college basketball already kind of permeating. BYU will play Queens tomorrow, and then they have Idaho at home. They're going to start kind of seeing what they're all about when Ole Miss comes into town the day after Thanksgiving. Ole Miss is a top 25 team. So a lot to get to on the show today. Latest with the rivalry game fallout. The comments of Mark Harlan that continue to be heavily discussed both locally and nationally. Getting you ready for a busy weekend in pro and college football. NBA Cup, Utah Jazz action. Tim McMahon will join us right out of the gates. From ESPN for your NBA Daily Assist, Max Chadwick, Pro Football Focus for some pro and college football. Aforementioned Lynn Roberts for some Utah women's hoops. And then our buddy, our old producer, JP, John Paul Chunga, who now is wearing a bunch of different hats. He does a lot of the podcasting over for the Utah Jazz Podcast Network. He does the Utah Royals. He's the voice of the Royals. And this season, it is the debut of JP as the voice of the Salt Lake City Stars. So our guy is busy. Bring him in studio today to chat a little bit of everything, quite frankly, on this Tuesday afternoon. So Tim McMahon, Max Chadwick, Lynn Roberts, JP Chunga, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy, Porter Larson, in a vest. Oh, he took the vest off. He's wearing a Milwaukee beer sweatshirt. But if it's cold and snowy outside, a vest is a handy thing to have in your repertoire. You got to have it.
Milwaukee Power Tools, just to be very clear.
Oh, well, there's a Milwaukee beer, and that I think your power tool company stole the Milwaukee beer kind of branding.
I don't know about that. But anyway.
I'll look into it.
Yeah, it's vest weather. So glad it's winter time, kind of. But looking forward to the season. And as you mentioned, Spence, plenty to get to today. Still reacting to what was a holy war that gave us fodder probably for weeks, months, however long it may take. And some college football to get to with the CFP rankings this afternoon, Jazz basketball, hockey club, little RSL, maybe some soccer with JP as well. So we'll go all over the map on this wet and somewhat snowy Salt Lake City day.
You buried the lead. It's the NBA Cup today. It's the Emirates NBA League Cup.
Well, I thought you were going to spend the entirety of the opening segment on that, so I wanted to leave the big story of the day to you. Of course, the defending champion Lakers in the NBA Cup, of course.
LeBron. 9 straight elimination games undefeated, according to Windhorst.
There you go.
My guy's leaning into the propaganda so much. God bless him. ESPN NBA's partner. Do what you got to do. But, don't do that.
It's not an elimination game.
It's not. All right. Tim McMahon will join us right out of the gates to get you guys ready for the NBA Cup. Tonight, the Suns are in town. But Standard Restaurant Supply is your tailgate headquarters. Get everything you need to make your tailgate epic. Standard carries everything from serving dishes, sterno propane, portable barbecues, and more. Check them out online at standardrestaurant.com or stop by their location at 3500 Southwest Temple. Time now on a Tuesday for your opening tip. So Tuesday for us is still kind of reactionary style when it comes to the show. Wednesday, we kind of start to turn the page about what's coming up as far as this weekend in pro and college football. But ultimately, we're kind of still in the space where we're looking back, kind of reflecting on what exactly happened on Saturday night on a number of different levels. And yesterday, we kind of covered all of them. We talked about the flow of the game. We talked to Scott Mitchell about what happened in the second half where Utah just couldn't move the football. There are some injury rumors out there, but because it has not been officially announced by the U, I can't go with them. But if they're true, 2 or 3 other pieces outside of Brian Keithy were lost for the season on Saturday against Brigham Young, making the challenge that lies ahead even that much more difficult, unfortunately. But again, until they're actually announced by the school and the athletic department, it's not necessarily something I feel comfortable talking about. If we get information, we'll bring it to you. But, we cover this thing from every single angle. Exactly how it went down, why it went down, special teams touchdown allowed by the University of Utah, the controversial 4th down holding call that extended the game, Kalani's timeout, that ultimately gave BYU another chance. And then landing, at the end of the day, on the comments that were made by Mark Harlan after the game, the University of Utah athletic director, saying the BYU game was stolen from them. And, we've talked about it. Everybody's talked about it. It's not necessarily anything that I want to dig into, and I don't think Mark should continue to be hit over the head with it. I'll repeat what I said yesterday. I don't know this because I have not talked to Mark, but it was a surprising moment for a guy that, in my experience with him over the past few years, both on and off air, seems very smart, very measured, very calculated, very careful. And it was the exact opposite of all of those things. It was careless. It was emotional. It was the wrong way to go about it. And honestly, the first time I heard it, my first thought was he's going to be in a lot of trouble because of who Brett Yormark is, the commissioner of the Big 12, who is a Northeast sports and business executive who is a cutthroat guy. And so when I heard the $40,000 fine and the public reprimand, I'll be honest, I was relieved. I don't want to see Mark lose his job. And all of you that are calling for him to lose his job, pump the brakes. Quote, I've been an athletic director for 12 years. The game was absolutely stolen from us. We were excited about being in the Big 12, but tonight I am not. We won this game. Someone else stole it from us. I'm very disappointed. I will talk to the commissioner. This is not fair to our team. I'm disgusted by the professionalism of the officiating crew tonight. Ultimately, my whole thing on this is like, what motivated Mark to do it in the moment? Athletic directors don't typically talk after games. He did not have to take the mic. So why did he want to take the mic, right? And there are probably several different scenarios. The most reductive and simple one is he was mad and he was emotional and he wanted to send a message. But in those moments, those are the times, and this is not a sport thing. This is just simply how you have to roll if you want to exist in this this little blue marble rolling around in the middle of nowhere. If you want to be part of the simulation, part of the situation, those are things that you have to learn to temper in the most heightened of emotions. Like the most destructive things I certainly can, point to in my life are things that I've done or said when I've been angry or emotional. I feel like I've been wronged, right? We all want to lash out if we feel like we've been wronged, if we feel like we've been cheated, if we feel like somebody has taken something that we have earned. So you understand that, and you should have some grace for that, because I'm sure who amongst us has not had that emotional outburst and emotional moment that has led to regret. Yours probably wasn't on camera, right? But I'm sure you can relate to it and probably wish that you had a mulligan. I have several of those. And I'm sure Mark, as I said yesterday, without knowing this, I have not talked to him, but without knowing this, my guess is Mark would very much like a do-over and would very much like a mulligan. Now, that's not how life works. And when you say or do certain things that are out of line or not necessarily the way you should roll, you pay for them. And sometimes you pay for them harshly. And sometimes it takes a lot of time to come back from them. I mean, I can speak to that certainly. Mark releases a statement the day after, and after he had spoken with Brett Yormark, I'm sure the commissioner gently encouraged Mark to release something. And I think the statement fell short. He said, quote, last night following our game against BYU, I made clear my feelings related to the game officiating. However, I recognize there are more appropriate times and avenues to express those concerns, and I accept the consequences of my decision. My comments came after having just left our locker room where our student athletes were hurting and upset. University of Utah is proud to be a member of the Big 12 Conference, and we look forward to working with our peers to continue to enhance the league. BYU Coach Tataki and their coaches and student athletes are having a terrific season, and we wish them the very best. Fell short of the mark. No pun intended there. I mean, ultimately, it really is missing two words, and that is I'm sorry. And I do have to wonder where Taylor Randall is on this. I do have to wonder where boosters, alumni, and donors are on this, and I honestly don't know. I'm just wondering out loud. I have no idea. Like I said, the whole, he should lose his job crowd, all right. Tell me you don't really know how the world works without telling me you don't know how the world works. Mark has a good reputation from what I can tell. I honestly can't speak to it. And by the way, we didn't bring this on air yesterday, but this was the statement of the Big 12 the next day after deciding how they were going to roll. He said, quote, and I don't know if this is the commissioner, this is simply from the Big 12, quote, Mark's comments irresponsibly challenged the professionalism of our officials and the integrity of the Big 12 Conference. There's a right way and a wrong way to voice concerns. Unfortunately, Mark chose the wrong way. Accordingly, in violation, warrants a public reprimand and a financial penalty. Found out that was $40,000. The Big 12 Conference prioritizes professionalism, integrity, and fairness, and will continue to do so. And there's some language in there that indicates the portion of Mark's comments that most set Brett Yormark off, and that is basically challenging the professionalism and therefore the integrity of the officials, and then tying those criticisms directly to the Big 12 Conference. Because then you're trying to undermine the conference, and then you're going to run foul of the commissioner. And again, a guy who is just simply no nonsense. And so those essentially are the dynamics of this thing that I think really irked the Big 12 the most. And like I said, I honestly thought it was going to be worse. When I saw the news as far as what they had decided to do, I was relieved because I thought Mark was going to be a lot of trouble. But as we look back on this game, it's funny. As the years pass and you have the emotional look back on Utah, BYU football games, you only need to say like one name, right? Doink off the crossbar, block kicks, Brandon Burton, Beck to Harling, right? You can be reductive. Scott Mitchell, Eddie Johnson, you can be reductive of a lot of these games and call them the Brandon Burton block game, right? The Brett Ratliff holy bleep game. In 10 years, this is going to be the Mark Harlan game. And, of course, people will talk about the holding penalty and the controversial, allowance for Brigham Young to have another shot to move down the field, which, to their credit, they did and kicked the game-winning field goal. But as this thing kind of continues to permeate throughout both local and national college football news, like everybody is chiming in on this. Terry McCauley, an ex-official, chimed in on it and essentially said it's a foul, period, end of story. Joel Klatt has a more nuanced look at it and thinks there's a lot to be upset about when it comes to the lack of consistency as far as how the game was called, and brings up the fact that Jake Retzlaff wasn't even looking in the direction of the receiver, and it was not germane to the outcome of the play, and Jake essentially was sacked anyway. There are a lot of different takes on that, but it seems like the take on what Mark had to say after the game is pretty unanimous, and I do think, whether he meant to do it or not, he has now stamped his name in BYU Utah history, and he will look back. We will look back on this game as the night that the Utah AD decided to take the mic. All right, I want to tell you about my friends at Clearwater Distilling, the only distillery in Utah County, open on Sundays. Great spirits, tasting room, and the nicest crew around. Right now, they have their limited release Wednesday whiskey batch number 2, a mix of their bourbon and rye whiskeys. Try their Scandalous, the Renee, or their vodka in most state liquor stores. They're our VIP ESPN tailgate craft cocktail provider. So check out the tailgate. Schedule a tour and tasting in their Victorian tasting room. It makes a great date night or fun activity anytime. They've got a grown-up version of cinnamon whiskey. They have ultra-premium spirits. You can buy their spirits in state liquor stores online or take a trip to their beautiful distillery. Get more information online at clearwaterdistilling.com. Or go check them out at 564 West, 700 South in Pleasant Grove, Suite 401. NBA Cup action. It's fantastic. Tim McMahon joins us coming up next right here on ESPN 700. The rain and the snow coming down rather heavily in Salt Lake this afternoon. It is chilly. It is cold. But I'll tell you what, it's only going to be hot downtown tonight. See what I did there? Leagues Cup, baby. The NBA Cup starts tonight. Group play. The Phoenix Suns are in town. And NBA Cup enthusiast and great overall guy and writer, Tim McMahon, is our guest on a Tuesday. Hello, Tim. How are you, sir?
Howdy, partner. I am doing all right. I am outside looking over the bay here in San Francisco. Nice, a little bit of a chill in the air, but nice sunny day. Some boats in the water, none that have Klay Thompson as the captain, but here we go.
So you are in an area where there's actually an interesting game tonight. We'll get there in a moment. But before we start, what should our listeners know, Tim, about the newly branded NBA Cup? Last year it was the play-in tournament. The group play starts tonight, and the Suns are in town to play the Jazz.
The in-season tournament last year, the play-in tournament's a whole separate deal.
In-season, yes.
Jazz have to. The Jazz have tried very hard to avoid the play-in tournament the last couple of years. I don't think that'll be such a problem this year. I mean, same concept, new courts, new sponsor, and what is it, Emiratis? I don't even know how to pronounce it, to be honest with you. I think that might be right.
Emirates.
Emirates. What? Dang it! I guess I didn't know how to pronounce it.
It's all right.
Oh well. I tell you what, by the end of this NBA Cup season, I certainly will know, and so that's marketing doing its best. But hey, $500,000 on the line per player for teams that win the whole thing, but. I actually like the concept because it does give a little something different during the season, but it's not completely outside the regular season. Obviously, until the championship game, all these games count toward the regular season standings, so you can't have teams just decide to kind of punt these. It's funny, though, because I was talking to one of the Maverick staffers today, and they kind of mentioned, they said, one of the best things that happened for us last year was we didn't make it to Vegas in the in-season tourney, and their two replacement games or filling games or whatever, the two games that you get, they played the Trailblazers and the Jazz last year, and were able to win those ones pretty significantly. So it is a little confusing when you look at the schedule, whether for the whole league or just for teams, and there's kind of a gap of TBD there in the middle of December.
Yeah, and I don't care how much money you make. $500K is not nothing. But I wonder, in your conversations throughout the league, players, coaches, front office, execs, is there genuine excitement for this thing? Do they feel like it's being forced upon them? I mean, what's kind of the feeling around the NBA as far as how teams feel about the NBA Cup?
I haven't heard a lot of complaining about it. I don't know if there's just a ton of excitement, like $500,000 and a trip to Vegas. I think all NBA players like both of those things. So they prefer to win it than not, but I don't get the sense of it's like something that, I don't know, that they're like circling these games on their calendars. Oh, these are NBA Cup games. And, there's been a whole lot of extra motivation. But like I said, I've not heard any real complaint. There was some griping last year about the courts. They're not quite as loud, but we'll see if there's issues as far as the surface. They're slipping and those sort of things. But honestly, those are the only complaints I heard, was that some of the courts were a little slippery last year.
Okay, well, I mean, look, the bottom line is, and we'll move on from the NBA Cup after this. This is something that pro basketball, in my opinion, has always been very good at, and that is being willing to look at dynamics and try new things and see if they stick. And this is essentially, isn't this Adam's baby? Isn't this Adam Silver's thing? This is one of the things that he kind of talked about very early on as really a copy of the European soccer model, the FA Cup and such, which I know you're a big fan of. But this is, to me, this is one cool, it's one of the cool things about the NBA. They're willing to kind of try these different things and kind of see if they work.
No, this is definitely an Adam Silver creation. I thought the courts last year actually were a very sharp marketing tactic because, hey, it got people. Those courts got people talking about the NBA during the middle of football season, and that's not always the easiest thing to do. And then, last year, the semifinals and finals were rating success. If we're being honest, though, they also got extremely and there was a success in terms of like the arena being full and all that. They got extremely lucky that the Lakers just happened to win the first one of these. And, you know, if the Lakers don't make it and it's, you know, the Phoenix Suns there, the Denver Nuggets, I think it could be a very different field this year, but we'll see.
So let's move over. Excuse me. Let's move over to where you're at tonight. Bike rides with Balkan music, Tim. I didn't expect to wake up and see a Tim McMahon story referencing Balkan music, and you wrote about Clay, and Clay is back in the Bay to see the Warriors for the first time. So we'll get to the Jazz in a minute, but this is far more interesting for basketball fans. Tell us about, you know, kind of the story you wrote, and then ultimately where Clay's head is at as he gets ready to play his old team tonight in the Bay.
Yeah, as a Dallas-based NBA writer, I've actually become pretty familiar with Balkan music.
Not a guy.
You know, Luka likes his Balkan music, and when he comes out to warm up, that's what's playing on the American Airlines Center. It's about 5 minutes into Klay Thompson's warm up. So, you know, just kind of an example of, you know, an adjustment that Klay's making. He did not bring a boat to Dallas. You know, he doesn't have a boat dock to one of the lakes. He takes his, you know, he goes on the occasional bike rides to get a little look at the water, but that's that. And, you know, the sense I really get from Clay, I talked to him for a little while for that story and just kind of having been around him so far this season, is he does not want everything to be about him being former Warrior Klay Thompson. You know, he wants it to be about a starter for a team that thinks it can be a contender. He's very focused on now. And like, you know, the other night in Denver, he was asked about, hey, what does this mean for you? And he said, it's, you know, it'll be cool to see people, but it's really just another regular season game in November. And then he kind of admitted, okay, you know, there's a little something extra here. It's an NBA Cup opener. I mean, like, come on. So he is really trying to put up the stoic face. Didn't talk to media after practice here yesterday or after shoot around. Like, he's trying not to feed into all the pomp and circumstance. And there's going to be a lot of it. You know, they've got these Captain Clay hats they're giving out. Steph Curry's going to make a speech at midcourt, and they're all going to, you know, tip their caps to him, like the whole crowd. I mean, there's going to be a video. And the people with the Warriors that obviously know Clay very well from over the year, they think he'll crack. They think Clay is going to shed a tear. But it is certainly his goal to just be focused on hooping tonight. And, you know, we'll see how that goes.
And this is always interesting to me because, look, I mean, he won 4 rings there, and he went from, you know, a late lottery, maybe a decent spot-up shooter to one of not potentially, one of the greatest shooters the game's ever seen. Like, when Klay Thompson is in Springfield, he will have a Warrior jersey on. There's no doubt about it. But ultimately, you know, you heard rumors like, well, maybe the Warriors are still interested in running it back one more time, and until Steph decides he's done with Klay, Klay comes back. And then you heard, you know, his dad made these comments about wanting him to be a Laker, and we know that that's where Klay grew up. Ultimately, what landed Klay Thompson on Dallas, Tim?
Well, Klay decided that he was going to go ahead and be the one who called that his time in the Bay was done. And look, they had the extension talks before last season. 2 years, $47 million was what was being discussed. Whether it was put on the table or not, I guess, kind of depends on who you ask. But it wasn't a deal that he was going to take. You know, Draymond got 4 years, 100. He didn't feel like they were making the same kind of commitment to him that they had to Draymond, that they had even to an Andrew Wiggins. So last year there was like this black cloud hovering over him the whole time. He felt the weight of knowing, in his heart, it was probably going to be his last year. And then I think there was a little crack there, and then they prioritized trying to get like a Paul George sign and trade done. He's basically like, if I'm not the priority, I'm out. And then for him, it became, okay, where do I have the best chance to win a championship? And he felt like, especially watching the Mavericks in the finals, where their lack of three-point shooting alongside their stars really bit him in the butt, he felt like he could come and be kind of that, you know, that last piece that the Mavericks needed. And we'll see how that goes. But he does not want to be Akeem Olajuwon in a Toronto Raptors uniform, right? He wants this last chapter of his career to be meaningful, to be competitive, and he thought Dallas was the best spot for him to do that.
So drawing any conclusion in this league after 10 games is a fool's errand, but Dallas, after going to the finals last year, and a lot of people's pick to potentially represent the West again. OKC just lost Chet. We'll get there in a moment, but they are 5-5. They're 500. So how's the Clay experience gone so far in Dallas?
It started out really well. He really shot it well in the first few games. It's been a little bit bumpy since then. Like you said, to knee-jerk after 10 games would be a little bit silly. And look, the simple fact of the matter is we've yet to see Luka play at the level that we're accustomed to from him, which is, firmly in the MVP conversation. He's not been that guy. And, when Luka's playing at that level, everything else looks a whole lot better. And so I think if you talk about what's not been right with the Mavericks, I think you start with Luka's yet to play, to the standard that he is set. And then, they're 5-5 now. Derek Lively missed the last 4 games. They lost 3 of those 4. He's back tonight. That's another major piece. I guess I'm spinning a whole lot of words here to say that I think the Mavericks will very much be in the thick of things come April.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Luka's just too good, and I'm sure he'll coast and then just turn it on, the way that we've seen him do. They do see a Warrior team, Tim, that has started the year 8-2, and they have the second best net in the West, and Steve is playing like 12 dudes every night. What has Golden State figured out early on, and what's Dallas up against tonight?
Well, and the amazing thing is they did that with Steph missing a handful of games. When he had I forgot what fancy term they used for the ankle area, but, he had that injury. And, man, you got to give Mike Dunleavy some credit for the way that they kind of pivoted this offseason. Knowing Clay's out the door, they weren't able to get the Paul George thing done. Obviously, there are conversations with the Jazz about Larry Markkinen, never really picked up any kind of steam. But to bring in Buddy Hield, who's been absolutely phenomenal for them, D'Anthony Melton, when he's healthy, really helps them. Kyle Anderson's been a contributor. And then, look, when Draymond was on the court last year, the Warriors were pretty damn good. He just, because of his own stupidity, missed a bunch of games last year. And so, I don't know I think it's a little bit early to say that the Warriors will be contenders in the West, but I don't think we can rule out that possibility.
Yeah, and again, super early. All right, let's start with the opponent tonight for the Jazz as the Suns roll into town, playing good basketball at 8-2. But Durant, I think, is out. He's definitely out tonight. I think he's out for a couple of weeks with a calf strain.
Yep.
So obviously that changes who they are. But what should Jazz fans know? Because these days, a lot of fans are going to the arena to watch the other team, which I get. So what are we going to see tonight in the Phoenix Suns?
Yeah, and obviously no KD is a bummer. And, that was a weird one because he actually strained that in the fourth quarter when they were in Dallas. I was at the game. I was in the Suns locker room afterwards. I talked to KD. He didn't get extra treatment. He was in good spirits. He wasn't limping around. And the next thing you know, he's out for at least a couple of weeks. So I guess there was a little soreness, and then it acted up on him the next day, and they got it checked out. But look, they still have 2 max players, obviously Bradley Beal and Devin Booker. And Booker's another guy who's off to a slow start by his standards. At some point, he's going to have one of these nights where, he's 16 of 22 or whatever. And, we've seen Booker getting these crazy shot-making grooves. I don't know if Jazz fans do or do not hope that it's at the expense of the Jazz at this point. It's a kind of a confusing time as far as that goes. And you know what? The other thing that that's interesting about Phoenix is Royce O'Neal's playing extremely well, and obviously that's a guy that Jazz fans know quite well. He has really settled into a nice role for them. He's shooting the ball extremely well. Is playing solid defense as he's done for years, and they love this rookie Ryan Dunn, who was considered a phenomenal defensive prospect who could not shoot to save his life. He shot the ball pretty damn well so far in the NBA. You can see the work he's put in this summer. So, the Suns are an interesting team. I kind of put them in the same group with the Warriors of too early to call them contenders. And they only win clutch games. They don't blow anybody out. But they're off to a heck of a start.
Well, the red-hot Utah Jazz have won 2 of 3 games, Tim. So, ultimately, Let's lean into that. And without being facetious, I do think with a group of really, really young players and a head coach who I'm sure every night feels like he's walking into a gym completely up against it. Well, I have no issue if they lose every game because I understand what's going on. I get what time it is, and I understand the the necessity of the pain. I do think experiencing some success here or there kind of puts some wind in these young players' sails. At least there's that, yeah?
No, I think you can't. You can't. I mean, you really don't want to have like double-figure losing streaks, and like you didn't, especially to start the season. You didn't want to be 11 or 12 or 15 or just whatever, just because that is such a weight, and I think it has a major negative impact on development when there's that level of misery, and when you feel like there's no reward for all the work that's being put in. And so, look, we understand the Jazz aren't going to win a lot of games this year, but you don't want it to be a 14-win season. And you want to see, these young players, you want to see proof that what they're doing is paying off. You want to see development, you want to see progress. And so, to be able to pull out a couple of wins. And again, they're going to be very much in the mix for the number one overall pick. We all understand that. And frankly, that's the plan. But that doesn't completely bottom out to do that.
Now, I like you, just kind of cede to the draft guys as far as who these players are. So I know you don't cover the draft yourself, but we are going to revisit this throughout the course of the season because college basketball has tipped off. It's now here, and obviously Cooper Flagg is playing for Duke. So we're going to be like the funnest things now as a Jazz fan is just to check mock drafts, and a lot of them have the Jazz as one of the top 2 picks. Like Gavoni released his stuff today. So I know you're not a scout. Tell our listeners, though, what you are hearing about the type of pro Cooper Flagg could be.
Yeah, Baxter Holmes, my colleague, had a really good story on Cooper Flagg yesterday, and I learned that I'm pretty sure I played against Cooper Flagg's main AAU coach when I was in high school.
Oh, wow.
That was one of the major things I took from that. I don't know that anybody else cares necessarily, but like, the question with Cooper Flagg is he going to be a guy who could be a primary scorer? Because as far as everything else goes, like, dude, he's a 6'9", multi-position, high intensity, high level defensive player. You're going to see, this is a guy, he's going to be a 5x5 threat because he's going to block shots. He's going to get steals. He's a phenomenal passer. Got that kind of feel. He's a super athlete. I think the ability to create shots and kind of the overall shooting, those are the questions. But, so I don't know if he's going to be like a number one offensive option, but he's going to be a guy who can help you win games in a whole lot of different ways.
All right, before I set you loose, I got to get your take on what Chet's injury means for OKC. I mean, Shea just went for 45 in the first game without him, and they're still really deep, and I'm sure they're going to tread water, and it looks like he'll be reevaluated in 10 to 12 weeks, so maybe it isn't catastrophic, but they were off to such a fun, not just a successful start, fun team to watch at 9-2, and Chet's going to be out for a while. What do you think this means for OKC?
I mean, they were off to a dominant start, and they were the best defensive team that we have seen in a while, in several years in the NBA. And, Chet was, to me, the early front runner to be Defensive Player of the Year, certainly on the path to being an All-Star. But they're going to win plenty of games without him. They've got to kind of get through these next, whatever it's going to be, 2 or 3 weeks before Hartenstein's ready to make his Thunder debut. He's still recovering from that hand that he broke in their preseason finale. And obviously then, they won't have to play small as they are right now. But I think Chet is expected to be back, well before the playoffs. Really what this does, though, is they're pushing back the entire experimental timetable as far as do Chet and Hartenstein, how much do they play together? What's the rotation look like? How much are their minutes staggered? Those guys aren't going to play together at all until, I don't know, probably maybe the All-Star break sometime around there. And so, that's a big spum. I still think if you're asking me who would I bet on being the number one seed in the Western Conference, I still would pick Oklahoma City. I just wouldn't be as confident, obviously, as I was before Chet went down.
All right, Tim. Thanks for the time, man. Enjoy that game. Should be a fun atmosphere, and we'll chat soon.
I appreciate it, brother.
All right, Tim McMahon covers the NBA for ESPN. He is the Jazz reporter for ESPN. He's out here quite a bit when the Jazz are a serious team, which they're not right now. He's on Twitter at ESPN _ McMahon, Klay Thompson is back in the Bay Area to take on the Warriors. The Jazz welcome in the Phoenix Suns. So the injury report as of now, we know Durant is out. Looks like Keontae is a game-time decision, but expected to play. Walker Kessler on the injury report I have right now is listed as out. The last game we saw, Walker did play 19 minutes against San Antonio, got the start, had to leave. So haven't heard anything official there. I'm just trying to figure out who would start tonight if Walker's not going to play. Last game it was Markkanen, Cody Williams, Walker Kessler, Colin Sexton, Isaiah Collier. My guess is Collier goes to the bench with Keontae back. And I guess John Collins is your starting center unless Will goes with Drew Eubanks. Jazz basketball. It's fantastic. NBA Cup debuts tonight. All right, we'll get to some pro football, college football with Max Chadwick coming up on the other side. We're going to bring in Lynn Roberts today, some Utah women's hoops. JP Chunga live in studio in the 4 o'clock hour. We'll go from there. NBA Daily Assist is brought to you by Bout Time Pub, Utah's premier sports bar. Amazing food, killer cocktails. Make Bout Time your place for sports or even brunch. All food made from scratch, and they have new mocktails for those of you who don't partake in alcohol. More TVs than tables. All Bout Time TVs have their own receiver, so we have all the games going live with free high-speed Wi-Fi. It makes a great place to, quote, work from home. It's fall and almost winter. It's basically winter, so keep Bout Time Pub in mind for any upcoming holiday parties. Locations: Ogden, Layton, West Valley, West Jordan, Sandy, Tooele, Harriman, Bluffdale, Lehigh, and Vineyard. Utah Sports Bar, celebrating the 15-year anniversary. In-house smoked wings, fresh made from scratch food. Brunch available on the weekends from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., including a build-your-own Bloody Mary bar. They show every UFC event with no cover charge. Your home for the NHL, the NBA, Major League Soccer, Major League Baseball, college football, the NFL, and more. They have every pass for every league, so they have every game live. They show every Jazz game, every Utah Hockey Club game. More information can be found at BoutTimePub.com. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Max Chadwick is our guest coming up next on a Tuesday right here on ESPN 700. All right, we're going to bring on Lynn Roberts later on today, talk some Utah women's basketball. JP Chunga will be live in studio for the 4 o'clock hour. The Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show comes your way tonight at 6 o'clock. Smith Snowden will be there. Sean O'Connell filling in for Bill O'Reilly tonight. Let's do some college football, some pro football now with our buddy Max Chadwick from PFF. Max, happy Tuesday, man. How you doing?
Good. How you guys doing?
Good, man. Appreciate the time. Obviously, it was a chaotic weekend here in Salt Lake City with the rivalry game as Brigham Young rolled up to Salt Lake and went back to Provo with the win. So now, simply put, BYU's undefeated. They're number 7 in the AP. We'll get to the CFP release tonight, but what did you make of a very dramatic night in Salt Lake City on Saturday night?
Yeah, it just seems like BYU's a team of destiny, doesn't it, right now, guys, right? I mean, that Oklahoma State game, they had the game-winning drive. Nobody thought they would win that game. Obviously, they had another game-winning drive against Utah on that one. Every great college football team obviously has got to be a good team first and foremost, but also you got to have a little magic as well. And I think BYU is starting to capture that magic a little bit. And, I think what they've done this year is incredible. And I think, 7th in the AP poll is way, way too low for what they've done this year resume-wise. I personally have them number 3 in my ranking because I think right now at this point in the season, you got to be ranking off of their resume and not in terms of, how good you think a team is.
So that leads me to the CFP release tonight. BYU rolled in at 9 last week. I viewed that as a damning indictment of the Big 12 conference as a whole. And Max, I don't think they're going to be higher than 6 or 7 tonight. Maybe I'm wrong. When the release happens tonight, where do you think Brigham Young ends up?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, the AP is probably, going to be around where they had it at, which is 7th overall. Like I said, I very much vehemently disagree with it. I mean, just look at what they've done this year, right? I mean, they beat SMU, who's still fighting for a playoff spot right now, is one of the top playoff contenders. Maybe could even win the ACC this year the way it's going. Then they also beat Kansas State, who's still fighting for a playoff spot as well. They beat Kansas State by 29 points, right? So you beat 2 teams that are easily top 20 teams in college football right now and will be in the top 20 of the CFP ranking tonight. You look at a resume like Texas, for example. What have they done this year, right? Their best win is against Vanderbilt, and they beat them by 3 points. Other than that, they beat a Michigan team that's going to go 6-6 this year. They beat an Oklahoma team that's probably going to go 5-7 this year. Texas does not have the big wins like BYU does right now. And Texas, by the way, has a loss this year as well, something that BYU has not had yet. So I think BYU at minimum should be number 3 in my opinion, but they're going to be a lot lower than that tonight, I bet.
The other issue with the low ranking, certainly last week at 9, and we'll see what happens tonight, is it does feel like and I'm sure it's a combination of the CFP committee, powerful television executives, and everybody involved in this entire thing. Look, brand bias is real. That's not new. It always has been. It's not a breaking news situation as far as how these things are analyzed. But I feel like there's still a scenario in play, Max, where Brigham Young could win their final 3 games, enter the Big 12 championship game at 12-0, and lose to Colorado or whoever and potentially be left out of the CFP. Tell me your thoughts on that.
That would be criminal. That'd be absolutely criminal if they were left out. And I'm with you, though. I think it's not that far out there. I think it's certainly a possibility, but that'd be criminal because then all of a sudden, if you're BYU, you're going to make the argument okay, why would we play in the Big 12 title game in the first place then? If we're 12-0 and all that can happen for us is to miss the playoff if we lose, we might as well just not play in it, right? And just go in as an at-large team because they would be an at-large team at 12-0. So that to me would be criminal. If they're 12-0, no matter what happens in the in the Big 12 championship game. Now, the Big 12 title game will determine whether or not BYU gets a bye in the first round, in my opinion. But I do not think, if they're 12-0, they're making the playoff no matter what, even if they win or lose that game.
So as you reference, it certainly feels like a team of destiny. They're 4-0 in one-score games. They've had miracle wins on three occasions for sure, if not 4, but they've answered every question thrown at them. When you dig into BYU, what are they most elite at, and what areas do you still have questions about as far as what makes them who they are?
Honestly, what makes them so elite is the fact that they don't really have any glaring weaknesses right now, right? There isn't really one thing. Like Miami is clearly okay, that's Cam Ward, right, carrying this team. BYU, there's really not a lot that they are, weak at right now. And I think that's what's been so good about the team is hey, if one part of their team is off on any given week, they have a multitude of ways they can win games. And honestly, the best teams in college football and the best teams in football in general, and in sports in general, are the teams that can win in the most ways possible, right? In case one thing doesn't work out, you have something else to fall back on, right? So that, to me, has been what's most impressive about BYU this year, is they're really playing great complementary team football. Obviously, Jake Retzlaff, his improvement has been unbelievable, and he's been maybe the most improved quarterback in college football this year. But that, to me, is the biggest strength of BYU right now, is that they don't really have too many glaring weaknesses.
I saw on your Twitter page you had a chance to sit down with Jake recently. I wonder what that conversation was like and what stands out most to you about how much he's improved.
That actually was an amazing interview, because I don't know if you know this, but that whole ranking that Jake held up, of the picture of him holding up the ranking of having him as the worst quarterback in the Big 12 entering the year, and he used that as motivation, and ESPN's been flashing that graphic all the time. That actually was made by my co-host, Dalton Wasserman, that ranking, right? So having him on the show was really funny. You know, we made Dalton eat crow a little bit, which is very funny as well. And Jake was such an amazing sport about it. But you could tell that he is always looking for that next chip on his shoulder, honestly. You mentioned the betting odds and how UCF was somehow a favorite over BYU. He didn't really understand that. But he's like, man, I love being the underdog. I've been an underdog my whole life. You know, I went to JUCO. I came out of JUCO. Obviously, you guys rank me as the worst quarterback in the Big 12. I'm trying to prove you wrong. I'm trying to prove everyone wrong right now. And I think that's what really stood out to me the most, is that this is a kid that is always looking for the next chip on his shoulder and always wants to be the underdog in every situation possible.
So they have Kansas, Max, coming up on Saturday. It's a late kick down in Provo. It's an 8:15 kick. And Kansas was one of those teams before the season that a lot of people thought could be like a sneaky contending team, and it didn't turn out that way. However, they've been better as of late. They smoked Houston, and Houston has been beating some good teams, namely Utah. They probably should have won in Manhattan over K-State, but they lost. And then they hung 45 on Iowa State. And BYU enters Saturday as a 3-point favorite over Kansas. What do you think happens in Provo on Saturday night?
Yeah, I think I would warn BYU fans, just don't look at the record too much with Kansas, right? Obviously, they're 3-6 on the year. It doesn't really look great on paper. But at the same time, only one of their 6 losses was by more than 6 points this year, right? So they've basically been playing one-possession games and being on the wrong end of them a lot now. This is a lot better team. They're probably the best 3-6 team in college football. I don't think there's really an argument there, honestly. So Kansas is a dangerous team, and you saw it last week against Iowa State, obviously. They're a very dangerous team. That's not a team to look over too much. Now, do I think BYU is still going to win the game? Yes, I do. But I do want to caution BYU fans from overlooking them just because they're 3-6 record. They are a lot better than that record would indicate.
I want to go back to Saturday night as BYU rolled up here, then rolled out of town with a win. And you know the deal, man, all the controversy after the game about the holding call on 4th and 10 as Jake was about to be sacked and there was a wide receiver split out left. And, you know, the hot takes have been widespread. The opinions are all over the place. You have a lot of people that did say it's a foul, period, like Terry McCauley. You have a lot of people like Joel Klatt saying it's complicated because of the lack of consistency with officiating. I don't know if you noticed, Utah's athletic director wasn't thrilled about it, and the head coach wasn't either, as a chair was accosted by Coach Witt after his presser. First of all, your opinion on the call, and then your take on the reaction after the game.
Yeah, I think the call was it was 50-50. I personally thought it was the right call. Honestly, I think there was enough there to throw the flag on that one. And obviously, if you're BYU, I mean, obviously, if you're Utah, like if you're a Utah fan, I'd be more upset with the way your team performed than just one penalty call, right? If you leave it up to the refs, like that's on you, honestly. And listen, Utah scored 21 points in the second quarter. They didn't score any points in the other 3 quarters combined, right? So I think that's really what you should be looking at right there, is that, you know, really for 15 minutes you played great football. The other 45 minutes you did not, honestly. So that, to me, that's what I think is the most disappointing part for the Utah fans, their loss. But obviously they always look for a scapegoat. That penalty call at the end of the game is a pretty easy one. I thought it was the right call personally. I understand people who don't think it was the right call, though. It was very, very close. But I don't think it was the biggest reason why they lost the game, honestly. I think there was a lot of other reasons why Utah just did not put away BYU.
So, Mark Harlan after the game with some very spirited comments. I wonder what you make of those comments and the reaction of the Big 12 to fine him $40K and then give him a public reprimand, Max.
Yeah, it was. I never seen an athletic director do that before, right? That was first of all, there's very rarely do you see an athletic director after a game do his own press conference. I don't even think Utah was planning on that. I think he just went up to the podium and started talking, honestly, because he had something to get off his chest. Clearly, yeah, obviously it wasn't a great look. And anytime you start accusing a conference of rigging the game when you're an athletic director in the conference, that's not a very good look. So the fine and the reprimanding, that was not a very big surprise to me based off those comments. That to me wasn't a great look for Utah's athletics department. I understand their frustration. I understand it was a very, very close foul call, and I understand being upset about that. But I don't think as an athletic director, that's something that fans could say. If you're an AD, you can't be going out to the media and saying those kinds of things. So I completely understand the fine and everything that happened afterwards.
So to pan back, of course, and you and I have talked all season long, and I continue to believe that you really can be as reductive as saying Cameron Rising was never right this year, and that's changed everything. But at this point, with 5 straight losses, it feels like it's a lot more than just one position, although Coach Witt always talks about the effect that Cameron has on his teammates. And we've seen it here in Salt Lake firsthand that when he's right, when he's healthy, for whatever reason, his presence simply does lift the group. I mean, that's what great leaders do. But it can't be the only thing to blame when you've lost 5 straight. You've only won 1 conference game. And Vegas thought you were going to win it. The media thought you were going to win it. And certainly Ute fans were very, very front-facing about their belief that they were going to win it too. Why do you think we're sitting here in Salt Lake with a 4-5 team overall with a 1-5 record in conference play?
Yeah, I think as far as at quarterback, right now I think Utah is the worst passing grade in the entire Power 4. I just don't think they had too much of a plan if Cam Rising got hurt again, which is not great considering he's a guy who's very, very injury prone, obviously. So Isaac Wilson is a true freshman, just wasn't really ready to go out there and perform. And Brandon Rose, did actually an admirable job, I thought, in that BYU game overall, but he's not obviously a star quarterback either. It's just they don't have a lot going on offensively right now. The receiving core as well, like Brant Keith, he's now done for the year. They didn't really have much at wide receiver either to be really too concerned with either. So that I also thought the front 7 for Utah is just not as good as years past, honestly. They obviously lost some big-time players like Jonah Ellis to the draft, and they just didn't have much to replace him with. So they've struggled in their front 7 as well. It's been all on the team. I would say you can't really put blame on one thing, but I do think that Cam Rising going down with an injury, not only for on-field purposes, but also off-field, his leadership, like you said, that to me was really what killed Utah's season.
So one more thing on Saturday, then we'll move on here because Utah hangs 21 points in the second quarter, and this is an offense that has not been able – they haven't scored 24 or more against a P4 team all year. And then in the second half, Brigham Young holds Utah to 79 total yards, 4 first downs, and Utah's possessions went like this: punt, interception, punt, 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 punt. I think they didn't even have a play in the BYU territory in the second half, and they had good field position. The final 3 possessions, 10 plays, 10 yards. And if they found a way just to get 3 in one of their 6 second-half possessions, they might win the game. So tell me what you saw from your eye in the second half as Utah's offense completely stalled. Was it BYU's defensive adjustments? Was it a cautious approach from Utah's offense? A little bit of both? What are your thoughts?
I think it was a little bit of both. I thought BYU did a great job of adjusting to Utah and making sure that Mekhi Bernard does not beat you. And I think that's really the key for Utah's offense, just whether or not they can get Mekhi Bernard, but not only him. Their offensive line this year is like one of the best in the country at run blocking too. So it's a combination of those two things that make Utah a pretty dangerous team on the ground. I think BYU made a concerted effort in the second half to just make sure he did not beat him and make sure Brandon Rose is the guy that has to beat you. And then if you do that, like he was already the third string quarterback for Utah entering the year. So yeah, I think that to me was the biggest reason why BYU was able to win that game, honestly. So yeah, I think obviously Utah just not having great a passing game was a big factor as well. But I think there's a lot of issues there that you could see that BYU was able to pull out the win.
So Utah heads to Boulder Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Early kick time as far as the local stuff goes. It will be on Fox. Utah enters the game as a 10-point underdog. There are a lot of rumors going around, but we haven't heard anything official from the university, so I can't corroborate. We know Brant Keithy's out for the year, but since the game, there's been some rumors about some other players that lost for the year too. We'll have to wait and see what that looks like. Tell us about these Colorado Buffaloes. What's Dion been able to do to really turn that season around? And you give Utah at least a puncher's chance on Saturday in Boulder.
Yeah, I think puncher's chance is certainly fair. I mean, they're always a well-coached team with Kyle Whittingham there, so you can never count them out. And obviously, they almost pulled it off against BYU, obviously, right? So you can never count out Utah. But Colorado's done a great job of just addressing their weaknesses from last year, which has really just been in the trenches, both offensive line and defensive line and linebacker. And I think that's really why they went from a 4-8 team to one that's going to be maybe in the Big 12 title game, maybe even in the college football playoff at the end of the year as well. So that's what's really been the most improved part. And obviously, you still have maybe the best quarterback in America in Shedeur Sanders, and in my opinion, the best player in college football in Travis Hunter. But to me, the biggest reason why Colorado's so much better this year is that they really attacked the portal in the trenches, offensive line and defensive line. Also got the number one offensive lineman in the country coming out of high school, and Jordan Stevens playing great at left tackle. That's the biggest difference between Colorado last year and this year.
All right, from a macro standpoint, Utah needs 2 wins in their final 3 games to go bowling, and the only thing, Max, worse than playing in a throwaway bowl game is not being eligible for one. So it's Colorado on the road, as we talked about. It's Iowa State at home, and then it's UCF on the road. Can Utah get 2 of the final 3 to go bowling?
I don't think it will happen, but it's certainly possible. I think you can look at the Iowa State and UCF games as the most likely. I don't think the Colorado game is the most likely one right now. Obviously, you host Iowa State, and Iowa State's been having a lot of issues. I think Iowa State could be an interesting one because Iowa State's front seven just is not very good right now, and not even a front seven. They actually run like a front 6. It's like a 3 defensive linemen and 3 linebackers. I think Mekhi Bernard could have a big day against Iowa State, honestly, and that could lead Utah to a victory. Then UCF is another team that I think Utah could beat as well. Will they win both those games? I don't know. Will they win 2 of these 3 games? I don't know. But I think those last 2 especially, those are the most winnable in my opinion.
All right, Max. So, as you know, to start the season, everybody was wrong about the Big 12, as we know. And it seemed to be, and there was a little bit of variance, but not much. You know, the 3 teams that were picked most to win the conference were Utah, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State. So there were a few Iowa States in there, but really nobody picked Brigham Young. I didn't see anybody pick Colorado, at least any serious person. And so it leads me, because Kansas State has still had a very good year, but if Utah's disappointing, Oklahoma State is shocking. They have not won a conference game. They're 3-7 overall. What did we get so wrong about Oklahoma State, and why has their season just been so disastrous?
The biggest reason for me is that Ollie Gordon is a shell of himself right now. He went from the best running back in college football last year to nowhere even close this year, honestly. And I understand the offensive line, run blocking wise, still isn't very good, but it wasn't very good last year either. He still ran for almost 2,000 yards. So that you take away that, and now all of a sudden, they were really planning on riding Ollie Gordon on their offense, and they just haven't had that. So now all of a sudden you got to rely on the quarterback play and the receivers to do that. And I like the receivers, but the quarterback position for them has just been a disaster for them, honestly. And then defensively, they have the worst run D grade in the entire Power 4. And in the Big 12, where pretty much everyone can run the football at an elite level, that's a big problem, right? If you can't defend the run. And like I said, Oklahoma State has the worst run D grade in the entire Power 4 this year. So that, to me, their inability to run the ball and their inability to stop the run, that's what's led to a disastrous year for the Cowboys.
All right, before I set you loose, one more question about BYU, because we'll see what the CFP rankings have to say tonight. And then, as the season goes on, we'll understand what the bracket looks like, because the rankings are not the seedings, as we know. But if we operate off the hypothetical, BYU goes to Dallas. They do what they have to do to get to the Big 12 championship. They win that, they're in as a top 4 seed, first round bye. If the second round matchup is Ohio State, or somebody like that, like somebody who is either Ohio State, Penn State, lives in that cul-de-sac. We know BYU's good. You can't have any questions left about that. If you still have questions, it means you're probably a hater, or ultimately, you're poking holes in things that at this point through 9 games have not led to a loss. You beat the teams across from you. You do it however you have to. If there's a little luck or magic involved or whatever it is, that's the deal. So we know they're good. Are they good enough to compete with the legitimate top, 3, 4, 5 teams in college football this year?
I think they can compete. I'm not going to pick them to win, honestly. I think, like I said, I think BYU deserves to be ranked in the top 5 in the nation right now. Does that mean I think they're actually a top 5 team in the country? No. but I think it's a whole different argument, right? So they're definitely not going to be favored against those teams, and probably even maybe even more than a touchdown spread, maybe honestly in a second round playoff game. But I think it's possible they could beat them. Obviously, like Penn State or Ohio State, they're very beatable. We've seen that in the past, and BYU is a pretty good team as well. But I'm probably going to pick BYU to lose in the second round, depending on who they play. But they're a very good team. Don't get me wrong, but that's a whole different level that you're talking about Ohio State as well. So they certainly have a chance. I'm not taking that away from them, but we'll see what happens in the second round.
All right, where can people go get all your work, Max?
Yeah, you can find it all at pff.com. And if you want to watch the PFF College Football Show, it's on YouTube. We're actually going live in about 45 minutes to go for our Week 12 preview show, actually previewing the BYU game and also the Utah game as well. So make sure you guys check out the PFF College Football Show on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts.
All right, buddy. Appreciate the time. Have a good show today, okay?
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
All right, Max Chadwick, Pro Football Focus. PFF has got you covered all season long with the best data, tools, and analysis in the game. Sign up for PFF Plus today to unlock all of their famous player grades and premium stats. Push to the playoffs in your fantasy league with in-season tools and award-winning rankings from fantasy experts. No matter what you're looking for, PFF Plus has what you need to make winning decisions all season long. Sign up for PFF Plus today for less than $10 a month. All right, Lynn Roberts will join us coming up on the other side. We'll do a little Utah women's basketball as the college basketball season is upon us. John Paul, our buddy JP Chunga, will be live in studio. It is the NBA League Cup. I know. You guys have been waiting. We'll also do a little college football, maybe a little RSL too, as the offseason has begun for Real Salt Lake. Then we'll launch into the 5 o'clock hour. Don't forget, when we say goodnight at 6 o'clock, it's time for the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show. Sean O'Connell sitting in for Bill Riley today. I know Smith Snowden will be along for the ride too. So that'll come your way at 6 when we say goodnight. So a lot to do on this rainy and chilly and cold Tuesday afternoon here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, our buddy JP Chung is going to roll by in studio. JP currently is wearing a bunch of different hats. He formerly was the producer of this radio program. Now he is the voice of the Utah Royals. He is the voice of the Salt Lake City Stars, and he's still doing podcasting for the Utah Jazz Radio Network. Get back to some college football in the 5 o'clock hour. The Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show comes your way at 6 o'clock tonight. Should be an entertaining one this evening after a tough weekend. So we have one coach at 6. We have one coach right now. We'll do some Utah women's hoops. They're on the road against Northwestern on Thursday night, 5 o'clock start time. And Coach Lynn Roberts back on the drive on a Tuesday. Coach, happy Tuesday. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm well. All right, so some new faces, some familiar faces. A 2-0 start. Neither game has been relatively close. We'll kind of get to what's next. I do want to talk about this interesting change of conference and what it means for your program. But from a macro standpoint, what should we know about your team this year? Again, a lot of faces coming back and some new faces added to the puzzle.
Yeah, I think that's well said. You know, we have our core group back. Gianna Neepkins, returning All-American, has 2 years left. Kennedy McQueen, the Hennifer, Utah local, and Jenna Johnson. Those guys are all seniors. Inesh Vietas back. Maddie Wilkie back. We've got some good ones. And, you know, a lot of preseason lists for point guard of the year with Inesh, and Jenna's on the power forward of the year, you know, 1 of 10. So we've got some good guys back that have been in this program for, 3 years, 4 years. And they also, beyond being upperclassmen, they have a lot of experience. You know, they've all played every year they've been here. They've advanced in the NCAA tournament and they've won Pac-12 championship. Like, there's just a lot of experience, not just age experience, but big game experience and winning. So that's a luxury as a coach. But then we also have 3 really good freshmen and a couple transfers that I really like, and then some key role players back that are, they've improved. So I like our roster. It's a great mix of new plus just experienced veterans. So I think that's a good balance when you're looking at the season.
Well, when you lose an all-time great, it's tough to make up for the absence. And Alyssa's now moved on to pro basketball in Minnesota. What have you tried to do so far? I guess you're just relying on the girls that have been in your program. But again, you don't just replace somebody who is historically great. So how are you going about kind of the big hole that Alyssa leaves behind?
Yeah, I mean, you don't. It's not, as I've said a lot, like, it's not zero sum where she graduates and you bring in somebody and you wipe her hands clean, like, hey, done. Like, it doesn't work that way. But where it's not like she was the entire program either. I think the system played for her. She was an incredible generational talent. But we had a lot of good players around her too. And so those guys, are going to step up, like you mentioned, and be in some bigger, more scoring reliant roles. But then we've got we got a grad transfer she's originally from France, graduated at Rhode Island, was all Big East out there. And so she, 6'3", 6'4", really long, athletic. She had 22 points in our second game. She's good, and she's going to help fill some need there. And then it's just, it's my job to put our best players in positions to have the most impact. But we certainly have the talent to make up for it. And while it definitely is a loss, it's not something that stresses me out in terms of, can we still be as effective, if not better?
Through 2 games, you're still playing the same type of flow system. Everybody touches the ball moves. You still like to shoot a lot of threes. It does look like your style of play. I wonder how much of that is based off of, and look, you do have a lot of players who have been in the program, but do you decide exactly what you will implement based off of your personnel, or are you a coach that says, this is how I know to win, and you're going to play in this system? Like, how does that process play itself out prior to the start of the year?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. I think our philosophy remains the same in terms of the way we want to play the game. The nuances of that, it depends on who your players are. Right now, the luxury is that we get to recruit players that fit our system. So if somebody cannot shoot at all, we probably won't recruit them. That doesn't mean they're not a good player, but they're just not a good fit for us. And so, we're recruiting now to the system, but every year is nuanced. And even if we've got a bunch of players back and it's, a lot of the same ingredients, it's still a different recipe. Every year is different. And that's the fun part of coaching. And you've got to keep it new. And so we're doing some different things that are nuances, but in terms of the philosophy of pace and tempo and space and great shot selection, that'll be the same as long as I'm coaching.
How has your recent success, conference championships, NCAA tournaments, how has that affected your ability to recruit on the trail, to get into doors that maybe 3-4 years ago you were not able to get into?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, great players want to win, right? And they want to be around other great players. And so, we're fortunate to be at a spot with our program where we're nationally known and respected, and we've kind of earned our keep a little bit to where we have, we have the ability to get in there. And, another huge part of that is our home crowd attendance. Last season we averaged 7,200. When I got the job 9.5 years ago, the year before I got here, they averaged 654 people. And so we're up to 7,200, and that's a huge part of recruiting. Kids, if you're an elite player, you want to play in front of a great home crowd, and we want to keep building that. My goal is to get to 10,000 and be like, Iowa and UConn and those types of places that have historically had great crowds. Like that's South Carolina. Like that's the next step. I'm certainly not content with where we are, and we just want to keep pushing.
Is this your 10th year?
Yes. Can you believe it?
Wild to me. I feel like you just got hired.
I know, me too. But the bags under my eyes tell the difference.
Well, 10th year as the head coach, but the first year as the head coach in the Big 12. And, look, it doesn't necessarily – this is just my opinion, Lynn. It doesn't necessarily adversely affect you the way that it does Craig, because the Big 12 conference on the men's side is ridiculous. But I feel like the Pac-12 on the women's side may have been a superior conference overall, or maybe it's pretty close. As of now, looks like we've got 4 teams in the top 25. Yes, after 2 games, Lynn, we're going to break down the top 25. Iowa State, K-State, West Virginia, Baylor. But how would you articulate what this Big 12 challenge means for the women's side of things? Is it better competition? Is it pretty linear? Give me your thoughts there.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the Pac-12 on the women's basketball side was, and this is not an opinion, this is statistically factual, and in terms of tournament game advancement, statistics, play, all the things, net ranking, everything, Pac-12 women's basketball was the best women's basketball conference. And I think what made it uniquely elite was that it was from top to bottom. Everybody was really competitive. There's a lot of population in the West and no other conference that could, in the area, Power 5, now Power 4. But so there was a lot of West Coast talent that we got to stay, we being Pac-12, and it was an elite league on the women's side. And maybe, how you might equate the Big 12 on the men's side, right? Like it was just the best. So, everybody kind of got absorbed into, well, not everybody, RIP Oregon State and Washington State, but they'll make it back. Everyone kind of got absorbed into other leagues, and so we'll all kind of be spread out, which I think will, elevate those leagues too. But the Big 12 is good. You mentioned 4 teams, but that's not just the only 4 that are good. Arizona's always tough. TCU is good. We're good. Colorado's always good. Like it's a good league. It's a tough league. And I think for me, there's a lot of places, being a West Coast kid my whole life, there's a lot of places I've never, competed at. New arenas, new travel, all of that, new opponents. But that part's kind of fun too. It's a new challenge. Change kind of keeps you sharp. And so I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. I certainly don't think it's going to be easy for anybody in the Big 12 on the women's side to cruise through. I think it's going to be everyone's going to kind of take their lumps. No one's going to go undefeated, but I think it's a really, really good league.
What did you ask? Because you had a lot of players coming back from injury, and unfortunately that was an issue that plagued you at the end of last year. So what did you ask during the offseason from some of these young women who play for you who were hurt to make sure that they were healthy, stay in shape, and were you satisfied with the way that your roster came back ready to play?
Yeah, we've got an unbelievable group that we have to, and this is the honest to goodness truth, we have to actually lock the gym so they don't get in when they're supposed to be having an off day. They are so driven and bought in and motivated to be great, that they work their tails off. So my issue as a coach now is that they overtrain that more than having to get them going. And that's a good problem to have as a coach. I'll tell you that.
Of the young women you have returning to play for you, who would you point out? I would imagine Gianna's going to be on the list as far as helping the incoming freshmen and the transfers understand, because you can only do so much, Lynn, as the coach, and then they're going to go and they're going to go class and they're going to go hang out. So who are you kind of leaning on to help, these new players understand what you ask of them as being part of this program?
Yeah, we've got a handful of players that just breathe our culture. They live it. And that, Gianna Neepkins is one, Jenna Johnson, Inesh Vieta, Kennedy McQueen, Maddie Wilkie, those guys, I mentioned them earlier. They are the walking example of what we want, and they, they've completely bought in. And so when your best players are doing that, the new guys fall in line. I don't have to do a whole lot. It's pretty player driven and player led at this point, which is awesome.
Well, before I set you loose, you should know that the latest bracketology has you in Region 4 in Spokane as an 8 seed playing South Dakota State.
Yeah, well, that's where we were last year. That was a great experience, wasn't it? And we played South Dakota State. So I don't anticipate staying as an 8 seed. The goal is to be a top 4 and host. So I think it's challenging, but it's doable. But just like top 25 polls, I don't pay much attention to the bracketology. We just kind of stay in our lane, keep our nose down, and chop wood, man.
I wouldn't imagine so. I was surprised that there was actually a bracketology available for me to look at after 2 non-con games. Before I set you loose, tell me about Northwestern, your next opponent coming up on Thursday.
Yeah, I've never in my career played Northwestern, home or away or anywhere. So this is a first. I actually don't know if Utah's played Northwestern. That'd be a good trivia ever in its history. But Big Ten team. They've lost a couple close games against two really good teams. So they're going to be hungry to win. And it's our first road game, and it'll be a tough challenge. But I think they're well coached, and they've got a Big Ten roster. So we have our hands full. We're the underdog going on the road in the Big Ten.
All right, Lynn, thanks for the time. Great to have College Hoops back. Safe travels, and we'll chat again, okay?
Okay, thanks for having me on.
All right, Lynn Roberts, she's on social media at Utes Coach Rob is where you find her. And as she referenced, one of the things that's allowed her to really build this program in the right direction is the home attendance being what it is now on the women's side. They'll be home next on the 18th against McNeese. Looks like they'll get rolling. They've got Notre Dame coming into town on the 30th of November. That's the top 6 team in the country. Then they'll launch into Big 12 play a little bit later on. So appreciate Lynn's time on a Tuesday afternoon. We'll catch a quick break. We'll do a little quick reset before the 4 o'clock hour when JP Chunga is live in studio. We'll back to some college football in the 5 o'clock hour of the program on this chilly, cold, and snowy Tuesday afternoon in Salt Lake. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. If memory serves, and I may be off here, weren't you an extra in Yellowstone a few years back?
Well,
something like that.
They cut my scene, so technically no.
Your scene ended up on the editing room floor?
Something like that.
Well, that's messed up.
I know.
It did make
salty about it.
It did make its triumphant return on Sunday.
I saw that, and I saw our very famous friend Dave Fox was prominently featured. Yeah, so they prominently featured Dave Fox, and then, as you mentioned, they take my scene, toss it away, never to be seen again.
But I've got some beef with Dave, okay, about this whole thing because I couldn't watch it on Sunday. I was busy grinding tape. I was on my fourth rewatch of BYU Utah.
As one does.
Grinding all 22 for Colorado to get ready for
How'd
Saturday.
you get that?
Can't tell you. It's a secret. I'm telling you, it's me, it's Herbie. Used to be Pollock and Yogs. Klatt's on our text chain now. We included Josh Pate onto this.
There we go.
So there's like 6 of us that are elite at watching tape. And so we get access to the All-22 because the guys that put the All-22 together then call us on a Zoom call. We're all on the same call to ask how we can improve.
Wow.
So I couldn't watch it Sunday night. And Dave sends out an Instagram story of his part in Yellowstone, which is announcing, you know what? I'm not going to say it because I'm not going to be that guy. Maybe you haven't watched Yellowstone
No
yet.
spoilers?
No spoilers, but a very key cast member is killed off right before the whole deal.
By Dave Fox.
No, Dave is the gooby newscaster that announces that this person is no longer with us.
How great would that be, though, if Dave was like the big player? He ends up like ending the main character's life. He's the villain.
I wonder if Dave has that sort of acting chops because he's only ever played a newscaster. You know, from what I understand, I think he was in High School Musical.
Okay.
I believe it was just he only plays himself.
That's fair.
Well, but maybe expand the range a little bit. Because seeing Dave Fox as like the main villain on Yellowstone would be awesome.
I'd be all in, to be clear.
But yes, I was mad at David because I love the show. It's an awesome show. It's okay. It's corny as all get out.
Yes.
My favorite interactions are like between the cowboys. Like, what's up, old cowboy? Welcome to Texas, where the steers are as crazy as whiskey and a acoustic guitar. Like, it's really corny. But
you're not wrong.
But I like the storyline. I think it's entertaining. And yes, Dave Fox was on the show, and he sent out his part where he announced a spoiler alert the day the new episode came out. All right, real quick. I am not one to corroborate online rumors because I don't live online, and Twitter's not a real place, or X or whatever you're calling it these days. But I am a person who does this for a living, and I do tweet out my work, and we tweet out the links to the shows and such, and I, from time to time, kind of kick the tires to see if there's anything exciting going on. I have not heard anything official from the University of Utah, and until I do, I'm not going to corroborate whether or not one Brandon Rose has been lost for the year. But that's the rumor. And I don't know if Isaac's healthy. Could we see the Ferrari? My guy. Let me be clear. The Ferrari's my guy. The Ferrari Batari is my guy. But what's your level of knowledge on the current injury situation under center for the Utes? Yeah,
well, obviously, as you mentioned, there's been a lot of noise, a lot of rumors, a lot of, we'll call it message board stuff. And while sometimes that's, not a real reliable source of information, well, I mean, I saw in front of my own eyes Brandon get hurt on Saturday, right? It was end of the game. It was, desperation time and him trying to make a play. And I saw him walk off the field and didn't look good on the wrist. Is it season ending? I don't know. I'm not going to pontificate on that and jump the shark when the team hasn't said anything about it. But it's another one of whether it's an injury that's going to keep him out of the lineup or not. It is another situation where I definitely saw a quarterback get banged up. Isaac Wilson's still a little banged up. Coincidentally enough, you mentioned Luke Pittari. Well, he got the start and the win against Colorado last year, so that's an option as well. And yeah, man, it's kind of eerily similar, but still in a lot of ways very different from the situation we were in last year when we were approaching the same game.
All right, time now for a giveaway. $25 to our good friends at Farmer and Chemist. Farmer and Chemist, excellent products to help with muscle soreness, arthritis, restless nights. If you have like that restless leg thing that it seems like every middle-aged man has, it can actually help out. So they also have gummies for your pets if you have like anxious pets. Best thing to do is to stop by their location, give them a call, check out their website for more information. And they're open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Saturday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., closed on Sundays. You can check them out on historic Main Street in Midvale or online at farmerandchemist.com. Really good people. They're all pharmacists, so you just ask them questions, some CBD products to help them out. So $25 gift card to Farmer and Chemist, 877-353-0700. Let's see. What should we ask today? A Yellowstone-themed? No, probably not enough people watch. Who do you want to see under center for Utah on Saturday against Colorado? You want the Ferrari? I want the Ferrari. That's what I'm looking for.
I kind of want to see that too.
877-353-0700. $25 on the line to Farmer and Chemist. Check them out online at farmerandchemist.com. JP live in studio coming up next right here on ESPN 700. War on Drugs came not too long ago with the National. I watched up top in the VIP section, checked out the scene, and I looked down on the people as I typically do. And among the masses, I saw our next guest bobbing his head a little bit, maybe a little beverage in hand, not getting too out of control, just enjoying the event as a classy gentleman would. JP, John Paul Chunga, how was the show, pal?
It was tremendous.
It was.
They call me the Bill Walton of the War on Drugs. I'm always in the middle. I'm crowd surfing. I'm ready to go.
That's got to be your brand from now on.
Yeah. Somebody has to fulfill the legacy of this man,
I love it.
who is my phone background right now. I'm showing it to you.
I love
as
that.
we see.
And I'm a Bill Walton guy. I've always said if you don't like Bill Walton, or if you didn't like Bill Walton, you didn't like fun. But now we need you like following. I call them WOD, but whatever. Now we need you following them on tour to become like part, because you're rising up the ranks of broadcasting. And we need to add to your brand, and maybe that's the Bill Walton of WOD.
Are the War on Drugs playing in Sioux Falls against the Skyforce? Are they in Grand Rapids when the Stars are taking on the Gold? Are they in Stockton, California when they take on the Kings tomorrow? Then I'll be the Bill Walton of the War on Drugs.
So that's JP's way of letting us know that he has a new job. You're wearing a lot of hats now.
Yeah.
We've got the Jazz Podcast Network. We got Roundball Roundup, my favorite front row. We've got the Royals, voice of. And now we add to the list, voice of the Stars. Congratulations, young man. Tell us about the process and tell us your excitement level for this new gig.
Well, it wouldn't have happened if I didn't do the play-by-play and broadcasting for the Royals, so that needs to be said 100%. Those experiences covering that team and still covering that team has been a real eye-opener when it came to play-by-play in my respect. But people saw that. They recognized that I have a willingness to join the play-by-play ranks, it would appear, and I was asked if I would do the Salt Lake City Stars, and I said yes, because when you get asked to do something in this business, you always have to say yes because the experience is only going to be valuable in the other things that you do. And I can't wait, and I'm thrilled to be a part of the development stories in the G as you see the next general managers, the next head coaches, the next players. Even though they might not be the next Kevin Durant in that league, you might find some of the really reliable role players that come into the National Basketball Association, and it all starts here with the Stars.
Did you, and maybe you did and I just didn't know this about you, was play-by-play always something that you aspired to do? Did you always want to call games? I mean, I've never really been against it, but it's never something I've searched out because I like this intimate medium. I kind of like interviewing people, long-form conversation. I like sports talk radio. But you said something that stood out because it's so true. And I'm not going to be the old guy to say, okay, young people in this business, listen up. But when you have an opportunity to do something in this business and speak into a microphone, almost no matter what it is. I mean, I did Utah basketball pre-F and post during the Giacoletti and Boylan years where I bet 4 people were listening all year long. RSL pre-F and post for years. Like, whatever it was, I knew, like, if somebody gives me an opportunity to bark into a microphone, if I ever want to do this full time, I have to say yes before I actually have stable footing, right? So is play-by-play something that you kind of always aspired to, or did these opportunities present themselves and you're just leaning into it?
These opportunities presented themselves. I never went out of my way to ask, can I be the Stars broadcaster? It was ultimately brought on to me because of the storytelling element that I do with the podcast and the commitment that the organization has shown to me in developing what I've got going over there. And they thought adding something to my plate would only benefit me as I continue to progress. And, you know, I always thought of myself as an interviewer, a storyteller in that respect by getting someone to sit down and really getting to the heart and the meat of really good stories. But this play-by-play thing is pretty addictive. And when you talk to people who do it, fortunate to know many people who do, you hear how excited they get preparing for a game. And me, during just this NWSL experience, I was enjoying the preparation of all the players that you have to memorize and learn facts and figures about. And they said, if you have that, you can be really good at this job because that is a part of the storytelling element and making sure that I still have a love of the grinding of learning about a Jason Preston who was a basketball blogger for the Pistons before he got himself a scholarship to Ohio and bounced around organizations with the Clippers and now with the Stars to getting his shot in the NBA on a two-way contract. The more you care about those stories, the more you care about these people, the better you are at conveying and ultimately sculpting your craft. You're never going to be perfect. Not everybody's Al Michaels, but the more that you tell these stories and learn about these people, you get better.
Al Michaels apparently has a contract rider that stipulates he gets a steak at halftime of every game he calls, but that's all. He claims he's never eaten a vegetable ever since he left his parents' house. What will be in the JP Chunga contract rider? When you rise to that level, what's the meal at halftime? I have a feeling it's going to have something, kind of like this.
Well, it's a pasta.
Pasta,
probably a manicotti.
A manicotti.
Look, these play-by-play people are kind of odd ducks.
Oh, my gosh. Don't get me started.
Some are odd birds as well. Ian
nice.
Being one of them. The man hasn't had a salad his entire life. Won't eat a hamburger with a condiment on it.
Really?
Yeah.
Ian just wants straight burger. Any cheese?
No.
Just straight meat.
The man has lived his entire life going to some of the finest culinary cities across this country and says no to condiments. Fry sauce, nice try. It's not going to happen.
You can't get weird on me, dude. Don't get weird as you rise the ranks. I'm not going to let you get weird.
I think other people are projecting on me these quirks. That's what am I just secretly quirky that they think, oh, yeah, he should be a play-by-play broadcaster?
Potentially. You said something that stood out. You said it's addicting.
It is.
Interesting.
Well, because there's nothing greater than cracking live on air because you're always on the tightrope. It's the free solo aspect of it. And times that by 20 when people are tuning in, not for you, but for the game. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, anybody could be doing the broadcast of the game. It doesn't matter who it is. So long as you don't distract from it and you just add a soundtrack to it, you can do a competent job. But it's addicting to find the correct word play. When Ja does a magnificent dunk and Ian calls it a jaw dropper, that's where I say, wow, that's somebody who's at the top of his game crafting the perfect sentence that's going to be the headline tomorrow, because ultimately that's the job that you're trying to do. You're trying to anticipate the headline for tomorrow in your caption today. Mm-hmm. And so it's addicting to try and find the answer to that question when you're doing a ball game, because you never think you have the most perfect broadcast, but it's much better than you thought when you review it.
Yeah. Well, if you're approaching it the right way, because you reference the oddities of certain play-by-play people, and the ones that are the worst are the ones that are in it because of the ego, right? It's just they think it's all about them, right? And, they probably think they're killing it every time. And this job or a play-by-play gig where you're calling a game isn't different than any other job where some days you have it, some days you don't. And if you're always seeking to get better, you will listen to yourself with a critical eye. Like, I don't like listening to myself. I never have. I never will. The only times I will is if I finish an interview and I go, that was a bad question. Or I get wordy in my questions, as you know, as Will Hardy found out last year.
Really?
I do. That's a bad habit of mine. But it's a habit that comes as a result of being a solo host for 4 hours because you have to filibuster a little bit. You have to fill clock. So I'll finish an interview. I actually did today earlier with Max Chadwick, PFF, my guy. And I asked him a question about the Utah offense in the second half. And then after the interview, I went, you should have given him more space. I inserted 5 opinions. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing left to talk about if I take up all the bandwidth in a question. So the only time I'll go back and listen is if I feel like I asked a question in a poor way. What do you, as far as going back and listening to a call or a game, do you do that to try to improve here or there? Do you earmark certain things during the game, say, oh, I need to go hear how I handled that? Like, how do you approach that dynamic?
I would start by re-listening to that question that you just asked me.
Yeah.
But
there, it was wordy.
It was a little wordy, but that's okay.
That's who I am as a radio host.
It's your show. Yeah. I listen to it no matter what.
Oh, really? Okay.
I really do. If I get tired of listening myself, then I'm not improving. I have to listen to at bare minimum, and I know this is going to get tricky because they're going to be back-to-backs in the G League, but at bare minimum a half of anything that I call before the next game. And I try to leave a couple days of space in between calling the game and the next match, at least for soccer. I've had the luxury of having so much more time. But critiquing everything, if I'm the toughest critic on myself, then when I send it out to somebody, one of my play-by-play friends, I know I've already thrown every punch at myself that I can. I just need to know specifically on things when I ask other people. Guy Haberman, who you may know, comes on the show sometimes.
Friend of the program.
He said something pretty insightful, that it's about when you're asking for feedback from others, be very direct, because otherwise the whole thing is in 6 months you're going to get better just by naturally doing it every single day or every single game. You're just going to be better in 6 months. And the most bland, run-of-the-mill advice that a broadcaster can give to another, keep doing it. You're on the right track. Mm-hmm.
Need reps.
You need reps.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But it's so true. In 6 months, I will be better than the very first game that I do on Monday against the Rip City Remix, which you can always catch at Stars at the Maverick Center. Tickets available at saltlakecitystars.com. But I'm going to be better in 6 months. I need to, when I go to other people, ask them specifically, is this how you would handle a situation? There was a big injury in this moment. I don't know if I handled it correctly, where I wasn't assuming too much on the field, where I wasn't making assumptions, and I was leaving it a little bit of time to breathe for the analyst to jump in. How'd I handle it? That's how I go about asking from critiques from other people and other broadcasters. But myself, I don't pull any punches. I'm listening to every single word. Am I using present tense? Am I using future tense? Am I being too verbose? Everything comes under fire when you're listening to yourself behind the mic.
Were you, Newhouse, Syracuse, stand-up, were you schooled to review your calls? Were you taught in J school, where you went to Syracuse, that's part of the educational process? You need to review your things.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, yeah. And especially with your peers.
Yeah.
Your peers are ripping you apart in class when you do a stand-up on the Syracuse mayor approving her budget. And they want to know, all right, you got a little too wordy in your stand-up up there, and I don't know how relevant this background was in the stand-up that you did for this upcoming soundbite that you got from not just the mayor, but you talked to the county commissioner. I don't know if it fit right there. So it was pretty brutal because everybody's so competitive. And yes, it's tough, but ultimately that's what makes you the better broadcaster, the better news reporter, the better everything, is that you're willing to put yourself out there and be open to those critiques, because ultimately everybody's looking out for you. They're trying to make you better.
So one more thing here, then we'll move on. As someone who's done sports talk radio and now play-by-play, because I've been told by people, if you wanted to do it, you could, because of what you've done for 18 years. Like, the line between the two is pretty thin. Has that been your experience, or do you find them to be two different skill sets? Because I'll say this, I think there are some play-by-play announcers doing play-by-play right now that are horrific at it, but acceptable as sports talk radio hosts. And I think there are some sports talk radio hosts that are horrible at that, but they're actually pretty decent at play-by-play. Have you found similarities between the two? Or are they two different crafts?
I think they're two different disciplines, and they're so different in what you have to accomplish with each, but ultimately the fundamentals of them are pretty similar. You're trying to entertain people, and if you're a play-by-play broadcaster and you're not entertaining, then ultimately what's the point of the broadcast? Now, it is the game, and you have to complement that, but making sure that you're also bringing new people in. Not everybody who's watching is the die-in-the-wool sports fan that is listening to a sports talk radio show and understands all the storylines of what has happened so far. I found them very different, and I think that's good in my respect because I'm so early in on it, on the broadcasting game, but I definitely hear that some broadcasters can't become talk show hosts and some talk show hosts can't become play-by-play broadcasters.
And, it's the old Mad Dog thing. Every radio guy can podcast, but 10% of podcasters can do radio or whatever. All right, so the Stars, going to be an interesting year because the Jazz have a ton of young talent, and we could see some injuries. We could see some dips in play. I mean, we know that Will is going to be developing a lot of these young players with the varsity, as Gordy would say. But we could see little Cody Williams, little Kyle Filipowski, potentially. I mean, these guys are starting for the big boy club right now. A few weeks back, head into hot yoga, look over, and I see the original Woj, my guy. 1994, senior, Cardinal Gibbons School in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm a rising sophomore. We both may have been at 5-star. Wasn't a big deal. Just a couple hoopers from the Northeast chopping it up about going to camp together back in the day. He was like a celebrity then already because he was a McDonald's All-American. He had already committed to Duke. But he didn't look like he should be playing high-level college basketball. I am taller than Steve Wojciechowski, but he is the original Woj. And I honestly thought, John Paul, at one point, he would coach Duke. I thought, he got a good job at Marquette, and he always came across as a very good communicator, a guy that was a natural coach. For a minute, I thought Quinn was going to coach Duke too, but for a while I thought, okay, Steve's going to coach Duke one day. Like a lot of coaching journeys, including Quinn's, took a couple of U-turns, and now he's landed back here coaching the Stars in Salt Lake. What are your interactions been like with him so far?
Yeah, Wojo has been phenomenal to deal with, and ultimately he's basically a part of the Jazz staff. The great part about Will Hardy is how open door he's been about allowing Wojo to be around the team and how they are using it as a very similar project from the varsity to the JV. Wojo was on every single trip in the preseason. He's allowed, without the bat of an eye, go into a coach's meeting, now during the thick of the season. Go ahead. It's all the same for him. And as a communicator, he's at a very different place than where he was with college basketball. So much noise, so much clutter. I have to be concerned. Did this 15-year-old respond to my text? Does this 15-year-old know who I am? Does this 15-year-old care about the program that I'm at? There's so much of that, and NIL has complicated it. Shout out, pay the players. But now it's just about coaching and teaching. Now it's just about making sure that the two-way guys are getting to a point where they can progress in their professional journey, whether it's with the Jazz or a different team. Making sure that the Exhibit 10 guys who are with training camp and are potential players who can play at the next level, are they also developing? It's all about teaching for him, and for somebody that for so long has had to recruit and been out on the road for so long, him finding this place where he can be in the professional game and he can still lean on that coaching and teaching element, that has put him in such a good mind space and put the team in the way where it really is serving the big club.
Will is 35?
36.
Will's 36. Steve's 48. Interesting dynamic, obviously, with Will being so young, but being the head guy. And I wonder how Steve kind of digests that when he clearly was on a path at one point where, like I said, I thought he'd be the Duke coach or maybe go on and eventually coach in the league. How did he end up with the Stars after he lost the gig at Marquette?
Yeah, he had family who was living around here.
Oh, that's right.
So
I forgot about that. That's right,
he was up in Park City, and he was living out there, the good life. You say it's a couple degrees too cold.
A little bit, about 6 weeks out of the year.
He was A-okay with that. I mean, the man was doing Ironman things. Like he was becoming the mountain man, and you can see it with the beard that he's kind of grown over the last couple of years. But he's climbing mountains. He's using the trails. He's decompressing after that Marquette experience because college basketball can be so draining. And he ultimately ends up here as a local, interviews for the job. Good pair because Will Hardy was, you could say, boy genius for Greg Popovich. So is Steve Wojciechowski with another legendary head coach, Coach K.
Yep.
And that expectation, being the keeper of the secrets, being somebody who has that shared experience, initially bonds them, but ultimately, as an X's and O's guy, as an offensive person, as somebody that knows NBA spacing, that's how he ended up with the job and why he's in the position with the Salt Lake City Stars.
All right. I woke up today with a real pep in my step. You know, I was energetic. Wasn't sure why, but I remember the NBA Cup starts tonight.
Oh,
I know. Big day. It's a big day.
Oh,
It's a big day for hoop heads. Big day for hoop heads. All right, so give me a little flavor, because just so you know, I will be down at the game tonight.
Oh my!
I'm making it, and just an aside, will you please this time let everybody know?
I will.
Everybody know, because I just feel like the welcome last time was underwhelming. I had to call my guy Dunio to get the credential. I mean, it got a little weird. So if you could spread the word, maybe a video tribute, but if you can't make that happen tonight, that's fine.
The Clayton Keller of Utah sports media.
The guy did think he was very nice, but he thought I was a hockey player. He was going to try to get me in as a member of the Utah Hockey Club, but eventually my guy Dunio got me in. What's the building going to feel like? You've been down there. I'm heading down there with our guy Trey.
T-Fitz.
Elliot will be there.
Oh.
The whole crew is going to be in town tonight at the game. So what's the building going to feel like?
Well, it's going to be a really cool crowd to see because this Jazz team is eager to get a win in front of the home fans because they got that road trip double away from the Delta Center. But it's going to be another good crowd. I'm shocked at how the fans never cease to amaze me, especially on these Emirates Cup nights with all of the eyes on them to watch the Phoenix Suns. And even though there's no Kevin Durant, you're going to see Devin Booker, you're going to see Bradley Beal, you're going to see a new-look Phoenix team that's launching threes in droves, much like the rest of the NBA. But seeing what this Jazz team can do with the likes of Kyle Filipowski, who had a good road trip, and Isaiah Collier, who now is looking very bright in the way that he got his first start last time out against San Antonio. They're playing the young kids. Oh, finally, they're playing the young kids after not doing it for one game against Milwaukee.
I stand with Andy Larson.
I was wondering, had Will lost his mind? Did he forget to coach? No, he didn't. We're going to go crazy over one game.
SLTrib.com, triple team.
You know, that's for other people. It's time to provide a little perspective. They're going to play all year long. But tonight, seeing those young players and how they go against one of the best teams in the West, Phoenix, I think last time I checked, they're number 2 in the entire conference. That is pretty stacked and pretty loaded, even without Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I guess we'll never see Cody guard Giannis. So
the valuable minutes of seeing Giannis. Oh, yeah, that's right. Giannis is on his farewell tour. He's never going to play the Jazz again.
Wasted opportunity.
Come on.
All right, well, welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros. Give him a call, 801-424-DISH. Wireless services, cable television, internet too. He can save you a grip of money with great offers right now. What's going on, Ryan?
We can, and this is pretty awesome. Dish is all about taking care of you, getting you the best offer and promotions. And right now we've got the stacked offer where you can get the multi-sports pack with the NFL Red Zone and also movie channels. Plus, guys, Dish doesn't want you to watch commercials. And so they've done things that nobody's ever done. They put together a hopper that will automatically skip forward 30 seconds at a time, or it'll actually auto-hop commercials entirely. And to make that even better, they're going to throw in Netflix, the ad-free versions, no commercials, free for 2 years. Guys, this makes this offer tremendous to many, many levels. Call us up. Get upgraded. Get the best DVR out there, biggest DVR, auto-hops commercials. You get the best price with us. Plus, we'll throw in dinner at JCW's and ask about internet solutions. We've got tons of different options, including fiber. If your fiber bill went up like most people, like 20%, check it out because there's offers out there. You can probably use the same fiber and spend less money. And it's the same thing in the cell phone world because Boost Mobile is building out this 5G network, and they're actually piggybacking off the biggest wireless provider in the nation. Probably can guess, say, starts with the first letter in the alphabet. But here's the thing. Let's say you're using that provider and you're spending $80, $90 a month per line. What happens if I can get that at $65 or $50 a line? Guys, that is a massive savings. And at that $65 price, you can actually get a free iPhone 16 Pro or the Samsung S24 for free, no trade-in, and spend way less money using the same cell towers. Call us and upgrade. Get the best price out there through the Dish professionals. Let us set you up, and we'll throw in dinner at JCW's. Call us now, 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
All right, there he is, Ron from the Dish Pros. More with JP coming up next right here on ESPN 700. The Emeritus NBA Cup. Oof. Drama at its finest tonight. Not just here in Salt Lake, but across the landscape of pro basketball. Is this mic on? Hello, John Paul.
What'd you call it?
Emeritus NBA Cup. Isn't it sponsored now?
Emirates.
Emirates.
Emirates,
period.
As a soccer guy.
No, that's what I said. Emirates. What did I say?
You didn't say Emirates.
Emirates. I said it earlier. I corrected Tim McMahon earlier.
What did he say?
Oh, something that was not even close. I mean, talk about not a soccer guy.
Yeah.
Emirates NBA Cup.
Not an English guy, too.
Rebranded from the in-season tournament a year ago. John Paul live in studio. I hate to do this to you.
Okay.
I don't want to make you emotional. But you were a producer for this show on the masthead, Dylan Moskovitz, but you're also a producer on this radio station for a number of years. And BYU Utah week was last week. You're no longer a part of it actively as a front-facing member of the media because you've been doing other things. But it is the biggest thing that happens here in the market, regardless of who you work for, regardless of who you cheer for. What are some of your memories of being at this radio station during rivalry week when you were producing shows and you were actively part of BYU Utah football?
I might have also been through a pretty big hole in the schedule of those two scheduling each other, but the game is awesome because both sides are unreasonable during that week in a good way. I say that in a good way because that's why people care about sports. That's why I care about sports. That's why everybody wants to go to these games, and they're so coveted. But like when Tyler Huntley says they so poo-poo and people actually take that seriously.
It's awesome.
It's amazing.
Great, yeah.
Because he's doing it just
They were replaying that on BYU TV all week.
That's awesome.
Last week. It's great.
That's why he said it.
Yeah,
because he's leaning into the heel character, a little wrestling. That's what sports are soap operas for men. That's why we watch. Okay? We want our stories. We want to watch our stories. And I've always enjoyed how crazy it makes people, how incensed athletic directors can get around this subject as well, apparently. But the fact that it's a conference game now, it means a little bit more than when I was at this radio station and it was just two teams not connected by conference bonds that were just playing each other. The conference element, huge.
It is.
In the entirety of it.
And I've often been asked, which fan base is more insufferable. And I always say whichever one wins. It's whichever one is winning at the time. And I've been doing it long enough to know by now the script is literally flipped depending on the outcome of the game. Because when Utah wins, the BYU cry is they're so arrogant. The arrogance of the Pac-12 Utah fan base. And when BYU wins, it's the arrogance of the holier-than-thou, pious, moral high ground attitude. It truly is like whichever school wins, the other fan base just uses the same talking points and the same script and the virtue signaling, like their accounts. Send me every video you have of a Ute fan saying mean things to BYU fans so I can then post it and show you that we're morally superior. Like, it really just depends on which team is better that given year.
I hate them. I think they're classless. So many memorable lines in this entire rivalry. The what's the Austin Collie line?
Magic happens.
When
you're living right on and off the field, magic happens.
Magic happens.
And that, by the way, and we had Austin on the show last week.
Awesome.
That is the most perfect thing you could possibly say, because what that does is reaffirm in Utah's minds that BYU believes God is their 12th man every time they take the field.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
It's a perfect rivalry because it's neighbor against neighbor. It's Utah County against Salt Lake County. Like, you can pit so many things against each other, how diametrically opposed the crowds are, the holier-than-thou nature of it all. And that's what makes good college rivalry. It is private versus public, which having gone to Syracuse and experienced Syracuse-Georgetown private v. private, it's just a bunch of people from New Jersey and Connecticut yelling at each other. It's not as interesting to me.
So true.
Okay? It doesn't matter that
Long Island, too.
Yeah, you guys have the same Vineyard Vines outfits on.
The rugby belts.
Yeah, congrats.
Nice boat shoes.
Sick. Very cool. Brooks Brothers again, huh? Okay, cool.
Oh, man.
I dig that quarter zip.
I feel seen. Two callers popped at one point, by the way, just so you know. Pictures exist.
That is not the same as Utah BYU, and my only gripe, and this is not with the two universities, this is with the television companies. Why is it at 8:15? Okay, guys, let's figure this out. I was in the Central Time Zone, San Antonio, following the Jazz, and I was able to do a podcast with Walker Kessler. You can listen to it on the Utah Jazz Podcast Network. But as people were coming up to me on the Riverwalk, telling me about the score of this Utah BYU game, they were falling asleep telling me the updates because it's 10:15 and it isn't even the second quarter, folks. They've got to figure that out because game's on too late. It's too good of a rivalry to put it on that late in the day.
I had buddies texting back east like, I'm going to bed. I had some family members that love BYU, but it started at 12:15. Like,
yeah,
can't stay up. We'll figure it out the next day. All right, you referenced what the athletic director of Utah elected to do after the game. We've talked about it on the show. So Mark Harlan. And, you know, if you've been around the game long enough, you know that there's the magic happens. There's the I hate Utah. There's the Brandon Burton block. There's the Brett Ratliff, who's that dude? Holy smokes, they went to Provo and won. There's 3-0. We could keep going. There's Scott Mitchell. There's Eddie Johnson. You can label a lot of these games with one play, with one saying, with one player. And there's the controversy of the holding call, certainly, that will reverberate. But I think in 10 years, this is going to be the Mark Harlan Utah BYU.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because it wasn't just – and so after the game, because I stayed till the end, that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Got to say hi to my guys, Kalani and A-Rod. Congrats. You know, dap them up, give them a hug, because that's the kind of classy person that I am. Walking home, boom, phone blows up. Did you see what Harlan said? Have you heard what Harlan said? I'm like, no, I'm walking home. Buddy sends a link, pull it up, and I went, oh, my gosh. John Paul, I thought he was going to be in more trouble than he actually – Brett Yormark, okay? My man doesn't mess around. That's a sleeping with the fishes
I thought so, too.
Commissioner in college football. And I just pictured Brett Yormark at like 3 a.m. Eastern time looking at his phone and being like, what? He said what? I thought – $40K and a public reprimand is a slap on the wrist compared to what I thought was going to happen. He goes after the integrity of the conference, the professionalism of the officiating crew. I think he got off easy. I thought it was such a swing and a miss for a guy that seems to be pretty calculated. What was your reaction when you first saw and heard the comments?
I thought it was very unfortunate. I thought it was really a bad look from him and ultimately bad for him to question the integrity of the sport. Mm-hmm. There's no reason when a game is being reffed by third-party officials to say that a game was stolen from you. That was egregious in my opinion, no matter how highly intense and charged these situations are. That's where you as an adult have to step back from the microphone and say, I'm going to stop scrolling Twitter, stop looking at my phone, I'm going to unplug because it's a game right now and I need to have perspective because as a person in leadership, you can't set that as the way that you want everybody underneath you. Stolen? You lost fair and square, my guy. Didn't score in the second half.
5 punts. Get a stop.
There's no reason for you to question not only the integrity of the sport, but call out Brett Yormark isn't his boss, but people who know his boss, people who are very influential in the most important part of his job. I thought it was unbelievable, and correct use of that word because I just did not believe that he would do that and then not take questions and just bounce afterwards, which was another amazing part of the clip. But $40K is absolutely a slap on the wrist for a guy, for something like that when you call somebody out. If I called out my boss and I didn't get reprimanded, I would start questioning my boss. I'd say, okay, what's going on here? Do I run the roost now? Is it my time to shine? Kind of amazing.
I've been thinking from the moment I heard it and from the moment I saw it, and look, Mark is not my friend. We don't hang out off air, but he's always been good to me. He's been in studio. I've probably interviewed him 50 times. And when I see him at games, he says hello and we talk. And he seems measured. He seems smart. I don't know the nature of his relationship with Kyle or anything as far as behind the wall up there. I really don't. But as I often say, and I wish I had learned this lesson as a younger person in this business, you can always not tweet. Mm-hmm. You can always not hit send. And he could have very easily just not said anything. I mean, ADs do not take the podium after games. That rarely happens. It's usually just the coach and some players. And even in pro basketball, like, it's typically all coaches and players outside of some sort of chaotic situation, like when Bob Myers took the podium after Durant got hurt with his Achilles, because he's like, we need to get ahead of this narrative that we brought him back too soon, so let me give you the take of the organization. But that's an outlier. It's Steve Kerr, it's Steph, it's Draymond, and then that's it. So he could have simply just not said anything. To your point about not taking questions, not a good look. But I started to, from the minute I heard it, the thought's been permeating through my mind. Why did you do that? Mm-hmm. So the simplest explanation is you're just mad. You feel like you got jobbed. You didn't like the call. That's the simplest explanation. You're mad. You're emotional. You want to send a message. But in what world is that a good idea? So I started wondering aloud, and I talked about this on Monday on yesterday's show, because the statement fell short too. It's missing 2 words, which is I'm sorry. Like we don't apologize well in this country. We justify our bad behavior. I'm not judging. I've done the same thing. But he said in his statement, he went into the locker room, saw coaches and players. I wonder if he was trying to show Kyle, like, I've got your back,
yeah.
And I'm a football guy. I'm tough, too. At the end of the game, he's on the field yelling at the refs while the kick return was still going, and the video shows that Mark's on the field, which doesn't happen either. I just wonder if this was like I'm going to show my coach that no matter what, I'm ride or die. I'm not saying that's a justification. I honestly cannot understand why a guy who I perceive to be as measured and smart decided to take that approach.
It did seem very out of character for the dealings that I had with him, because when I was at the radio station, it was his first couple days on the job coming from USF, and he was always very professional, very easy to deal with, and pretty measured in what he was going to say. So I buy that a little bit, but I do not discount how angry people get when the result doesn't go your way.
For sure. In a game like that.
And a game like that, in the electricity of the atmosphere in the season that has happened for Utah as well, because the context of the entire tapestry of this year has to go into it because of all the expectations that this program had heading in, and feeling the heat of things underneath you. Things can spiral and you start to lose your head. So many times athletes and coaches, they act out of character when they're put into high-pressured situations. That's how I saw it, in it being very out of character, but ultimately the workings of someone who's really emotional after a loss in the way that Utah lost that game.
And one more thing on this, then we'll move on with a couple of minutes we have left. And I honestly don't know what the dynamic is up there with how this all would have taken place, but I can remember, my father always had a PR right-hand man. His name was Eric Gelfand, who's now PR director for the New York Jets, but he was the PR director for the Garden for like 15 years, including the 10 years that my dad was there. And before my dad would ever say anything, he would talk to Eric, no matter what. Knicks Heat, Knicks Pacers, we could keep going. Like all of the crazy, emotional Nick 90s roller coasters, stuff with players off the court that no one will ever know. He would always call him. He would always talk to him. And before he addressed the media, including when he was essentially, sorry, Pops, outed for interviewing Phil Jackson when Jeff Van Gundy was the head coach, he calls Eric. He's like, what do we do? I just wonder if there's, and maybe Mark just ran up to the podium and was like, I'm not talking to anybody. But in moments like that, there's got to be contingencies and interferences in place to protect an emotional person from himself.
That's why they have a cooling off period for the players, ultimately, is so that you can cool off literally from the game where all your emotions are happening. And it's why Blake Griffin does the great comedy bit of where he's just saying nothing after a post-game interview because I just exercised for 2 hours. How am I supposed to put into words what happened on the floor?
Right.
I don't know what happened 5 seconds ago.
It's an insane ask that we ask of these guys. Yeah.
But it's funny the way that he does it and encourage that sort of deal to rewatch that. But he needed to think this through because it was so out of character for him. When Chris Hill was freaking out about the officials in the basketball game, he's an East Coast guy. That's what some East Coast guys do. Okay, they listen to a lot of Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, and they get mad at people.
And they're irrationally emotional.
Yeah, they're irrationally emotional when they're driving down the turnpike or in the Holland Tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So when Chris Hill did that, it was very in character. He's been that his entire career. He cares about basketball. You know that was his number one sport on the Hill because of how much he loved the game. And for Mark to do that in that moment, it happens. It really does happen when people lose their heads, and it creates these moments that'll go down in infamy and adds another chapter to the old rivalry.
And the news cycle will move on.
It will.
And people will hone in on different things, and I don't think he deserves to be hit over the head every single day. And for the Mark Harlan needs to lose his job crowd, like, get offline, calm down. You know, it was just a moment in time. But yeah, I still walking home and pulling that up on my phone was quite a moment. All right, since you and I last spoke, there was a scene in Minnesota.
I'm not going to talk about it.
I know. Do you have any off-season thoughts? Or?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
Because it's what I said.
I know this is hard for you, but you're emotional now, but you weren't you would have Mark Harlan this if I talked to you right after the Minnesota game.
I know.
I would have had a few days to digest.
I would have thrown a chair, too.
It would have been completely founded. No one would have blamed you.
They were different the second half of the season after the suspension, and they changed the team, and they didn't get back to that front half of the season form. And ultimately, RSL, congratulations, the most points, yada, yada, yada. Doesn't matter. Playoffs matter. That's it. To disrupt the chemistry of that team. Wow. That's it. I'm done.
Wow.
I gotta go. I can't do it anymore.
Do you think Trey's job should be safe?
I think his job is safe.
Okay.
He's fine, but it was very, very disappointing to see the way that the season ended with all the bright hopes. I was expecting time at Beer Bar, but unfortunately, it was robbed. It was robbed from me. Right. It was stolen, some would say. Yeah. Stolen.
Yeah. Did they even lose? I don't know. I mean, go back and look at the replay.
I wish they didn't.
All right, John Paul, tell our listeners where they can find all the awesome jazz podcasts these days.
Utah Jazz Podcast Network. Just look it up on any of the podcast platforms, Utah Jazz Podcast Network. You'll find an episode with Walker Kessler, the latest one that I did on the road in Chicago after the Utah Jazz got their first win.
All right, buddy. See you tonight. Thanks for popping in. John Paul Chunga, check him out on the Utah Jazz Podcast Network. He calls games now for the Royals and the Stars. He's a very, very busy boy. All right, we'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the program. Coming up on the other side, back to some college football. About an hour of football left for you guys on this Tuesday afternoon. Say goodnight at 6 for the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show, but let's bring in Ryan from the Dish Professionals, where he has affordable and alternative solutions to things you're paying too much money for, namely your wireless situation, your cell phone bill, your cable television watching situation, and internet solutions with great offers. If you call them today, what's going on, Ryan?
Yes, call us today. And, today is a special day, and I'll tell you, because if you call up, you get a stacked offer that you won't get tomorrow. If you call us up, you can get the 2-year promotion, the price guarantee with Dish. You guys, Dish doesn't want you to watch commercials. And so what they've done is they built a system that will auto-hop commercials. No other provider does this. They, obviously have the fantastic DVR that skips forward 30 seconds automatically, but it actually has an auto-hop feature, and it's super awesome because it actually is intelligence. It knows when the beginning of the commercial break is and the end, and actually skips all 10, 12 commercials, and you'll see the last couple seconds of the last commercial. To put on top of that, why don't we throw in Netflix, the ad-free version, free for 12 years, plus the NFL Red Zone, plus the multi-sports pack free for a year, and some movie channels on top of that. And guys, if you're a Netflix customer and you know this, I mean, we got this Tyson fight coming up. If you don't have it, you might want to get it. You might want to watch that. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe you're like, I don't really want Netflix. Well, call us. We got a $200 gift card offer. There's a lot of different deals that we can do right now that we won't be able to offer. Call us today, upgrade, get the best system for the very best price. We guarantee the best price no matter what. Plus this extra stuff that we have is phenomenal. Plus ask about our internet solutions. We've got a half a dozen different internet providers available. And most people don't know their fiber internet went up about 18, 20%. And listen, if you didn't notice that, well, you probably should check your bill. But here's the thing. A lot of fiber in a lot of areas is actually deregulated, which means that the federal government pitched in and paid for it. So other providers can actually use the same fiber. So you just pay your bill to somebody else, and then you can pay less money. Just that simple. Same fiber, just paying the bill to somebody else for less money. Call us up, take advantage of that. And the cell phone, it's the same thing. Boost is building this 5G network. It's the most advanced 5G network in the nation. As they're building it out, they're actually piggybacking off of the cell towers, the biggest wireless provider in the nation. You're probably familiar with them. They start with the first letter of the alphabet. You're probably maybe using them. You might be spending $70, $80, $90 a month for your service. Well, guys, what else I could tell you? You could use the same towers, unlimited talk, text, data, all the same features, hotspot, roaming for free in Mexico and Canada, roam anywhere in the world, and spend $30, $40 a month less. We've got plans at $50 or $65. If you do the $65 a month plan, you can get a free iPhone 16 Pro or a Samsung S24 free. And I tell you, if it's $65 a month, and that's $20, $30 a month less than what you're currently paying, you got a family of 4 or 5, you can do the math. That will save you a lot of money. You just got to call us. Let us work our magic. Take advantage of this dish deal while it's still here today. Call 424-DISH. We'll throw in dinner at JCW's on top of everything. If you call now, 801-424-DISH. That's 424-3474.
All right, what's going on? Drive at 5 time on a Tuesday afternoon. A little snow and rain earlier today. Looks like it's still snowing up in the mountains, but it has settled here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. Still chilly and cold and cloudy, but no rain or snow tonight. Looks like we're going to have a pretty chilly week, but not a lot of precipitation in the benches. Of course, it is Utah, so wait for 15 minutes and that could change. Happy Tuesday to you. Hope you're off to a good start to your work week after a bit of a chaotic weekend in the sports world and, quite frankly, in the world. So, busy Tuesday show. Busy Tuesday night in both pro and college basketball. We've got the State Farm Champions Classic on ESPN right now. It's Kansas and Michigan State. Kansas is the number one team in the country. Both BYU and Utah fans need to start watching some Big 12 basketball to see what you're getting into. We also are moments away from the CFP release, the second iteration of the CFP release. That'll come your way tonight. And the local intrigue is where BYU ends up. How far does Miami fall? What about Georgia as the upsets have continued in college football? Every single weekend, chaos has ensued, both in the Big 12 and then nationally as well. So, of course, that's something that we are keeping our eye on here, the CFP playoff release. The rankings, which, again, are not the seedings. The rankings are not the seedings. This is not anything that will be instructive as it pertains to the brackets. But it will be interesting to see, after coming in at number 9 last week, where BYU falls tonight. My guess is they're no higher than 7. I could probably stretch my mind to believe that they'll be coming in at number 6. That's not necessarily something I agree with per se, but I do believe the committee sent a very loud statement a week ago ranking BYU at number 9 as a very, very massive, indictment on the Big 12. And ultimately, BYU right now is the heavy favorite to earn a spot in the conference championship game. And according to ESPN's FPI, they're a 40% chance favorite to win it, which is the best in the Big 12. Vegas has installed Colorado as the favorite to win the Big 12 as of now. Okay, so as a result of both BYU's win over Utah over the weekend and just continued chaos in the Big 12 conference, BYU's margin of error is very, very large right now. Like, they could essentially lose 2 of their final 3 games and probably still go to Dallas. The question remains that if Brigham Young stays clean over the final 3 games, and by the way, if you are just hopping in your car to start your commute home, BYU is only a 3-point favorite over a Kansas team that seems to have turned a bit of a corner as of late. It's a game that BYU is still a favorite in, but only by 3. The line hasn't moved. The spread is large. The over-under is big at 55.5. But Kansas, one of the preseason teams that people thought would kind of be a sneaky pick to compete in conference play, of course, got off to a horrible start, not just in conference but in the season. But they've won 2 of their last 3. They beat Houston at home. They nearly beat K-State in Manhattan. And then they hung 45 on Iowa State just a week ago. So Kansas comes in having figured something out. It's a late kick at LaVell Edwards Stadium, 8:15 Mountain Time. And if BYU goes 12-0 in the regular season, and if they lose in Dallas in the Big 12 championship game, what does that look like? I'm still very curious about this dynamic, because I do think the committee sent the message a week ago that BYU at number 9 is an indictment on who this conference is overall, and you are a one-bid league. That's the way I took what happened a week ago, that even a 12-1 BYU Cougar football team that loses in the Big 12 championship game could be left out of the 12-team CFP. And whoever wins, the bottom line is whoever wins the Big 12 championship is going to be the lone team that will represent this conference. That feels a little punitive. It feels a little unfair. There certainly is brand bias in college football. There always has been. That's not a new thing. But if you're BYU, everything's still in front of you. That's the good news. But does it really matter if you stay clean the rest of the way if you lose the Big 12 championship game? A lot of that depends on what happens elsewhere. And because there's been so much chaos in college football, I guess we'll operate off the assumption that there will be. But, of course, that's kind of the big thing that's going to roll down the pipe here in a little bit with the CFP rankings and where BYU will be and where Miami falls and where Georgia falls. More upsets happening in college football ultimately a week ago. I would imagine we're going to have more upsets coming up this weekend. On the Utah football side of things, Mekhi Pittman about 20 minutes ago, and I'm seeing this on social as a result of Josh Furlong sending out a tweet. Mekhi Pittman has sent out a video explaining why he left the Utah program. I did not know any of this, but Mekhi is saying that he was badly banged up, an injury that should take 8 to 12 weeks to heal, but he said he came back and put his body on the line to play. Said he needed Toradol to play, but too many adverse side effects. And, that rumor surfaced about a week and a half ago that he was no longer with the program, but I couldn't really corroborate it until right before the game. But Mekhi has released a video kind of explaining what is going on with him. Apparently he had a partially torn Achilles and, had to use painkillers to play through the pain. So wish him the best. Hopefully he finds a good place to land on his feet. Obviously started at Oregon, ended up at the University of Utah. A lot of the news cycle over the course of the past 48 hours has been the comments made after the game by University of Utah Athletic Director Mark Harlan, receiving a lot of attention both locally and nationally. And, when the dust settles, we can always look back on Utah BYU games and kind of explain the most legendary ones with one play, with one name, with one player, with one coach, with one statement. Magic happens. Brandon Burton block, Brett Ratliff game, back to Harline, 4th and 18. I think in 10 years, this is going to be the Mark Harlan game. I really think that's been the main storyline that's continued to reverberate. You guys can all, take the piss out of each other online and complain about the 4th and 10 holding call as much as you want. There's really nothing left to debate or argue about, but it does seem to be the comments of Mark Harlan that permeate throughout the following couple of days of coverage since the game ended on Saturday night. Utah does hit the road coming up this weekend in Boulder, taking on a Colorado team that is much improved along the offensive front. They have two of the most dynamic skill position players in all of college football. One of the best players that I simply have ever seen play. Every time I watch Travis Hunter, I'm blown away. Colorado 7-2. They're 5-1 in conference play. And as of now, they are the Vegas favorite to win the Big 12. Utah is a 10-point underdog on the road in Boulder. That kick time is going to be at 10 a.m., which means our pregame coverage with Porter, Larson, and Jordan Wynn, and I would imagine some hot coffee and some heavily caffeinated situations will begin at 6 a.m. Mountain Time on Saturday. You said yesterday you were going to try to do this from your bed, but looks like you're going to have to come into the studio.
Yeah, we'll be in studio, but can confirm on the caffeinated assistance.
Let me ask you this. We touched on this earlier, and, Porter's a guy that knows the program well. He does our pregame, every single game and talks to a lot of people up there. I will not bring Twitter rumors on air. Never have, never will. But there are rumors about multiple injuries as a result of what happened on Saturday night. We know that Brant Keithy is lost for the year, and there are a lot of people surmising that Brandon Rose might be on that list of injured players, and some people saying that they're hearing he's lost too. I can't corroborate it. We have not heard from the school. But what is your understanding of where we're at with the health of Utah football prior to Saturday at Colorado?
Yeah, well, luckily last week they, for the most part, got a lot of the guys defensively back that they had been without for a good part of the year. Keanu Tanavasa, Junior Tafuna, Samote Pepa still in and out of the lineup, but Tavita Fotu is back in the fold. So the defensive line that was for large parts of the early season pretty much non-existent is back to mostly full strength. You've got Connor O'Toole, you've got the Fano and the guys outside, and then now you do have the fellas in the middle back in the fold. But as you mentioned, that offense, man, just continues to take hit after hit after hit. It's Michael Mokafisi, it's Micah Pittman, it's Money Parks, it's, you go down the list, and now the rumors of one Brandon Rose being done for the year. I can't confirm that, and I bet you'll hear from Kyle Whittingham on the coaches show here in about 45 minutes or so. I'm sure he'll touch on that if it's season ending. Sometimes he is one that will talk about it only in that circumstance. I wouldn't be surprised if, because it's the quarterback, he decides to play it coy up until Saturday. But what I did see and what I can confirm is that I saw Brandon banged up after the game. He was walking off the field hurt. He went over to the medical staff as he left the field the final time on the game versus BYU, and whether that is something that's going to keep him out for multiple weeks or the remainder of the year, I'm sure we'll find out in the next couple of days. But yeah, man, it's just a continuation of a situation where you like to pin it on, non-contact stuff, bad luck, a real bad injury bug, but at a certain level, Spence, you got to start examining other things. And I think this Utah football team is probably beyond that point.
Yeah, 5 straight L's. You can't put it on one position. We've tried to be as reductive and fair as possible to talk about the health of Cameron or whoever else is under center. My guess is if Brandon's hurt, it'll be Isaac, but rumors about Isaac's wrist too. And so maybe we see my guy, the Ferrari, Luke Batari, under center like he was against Colorado a year ago. The Chicago Bears fired Shane Waldron today, their offensive coordinator. Caleb Williams, 29th in QBR in pro football, which, of course, is not good enough. And if you woke up with an extra pep in your step this morning like I did, you know that it's time for the NBA Cup. That's right. It's here. Did you even know? Did you even have any idea? Turner Sports has a pretty interesting doubleheader tonight. If you're not going to the Jazz game, I'm going to head down and see the Suns and the Jazz. No Kevin Durant tonight for the Suns. Looks like Keontae George is expected to play for the Jazz, but Walker Kessler is out. 7 o'clock at the Delta Center. The Knicks and the Sixers are about to tip off from the Wells Fargo Center in Philly. And then Klay Thompson is back at the Chase Center in the Bay Area to play the Golden State Warriors. Team he won 4 rings with Stephen Curry and Draymond Green and Steve Kerr and company. So the Mavs and the Warriors tonight on Turner as well. But the NBA League Cup, the Emirates NBA League Cup, sponsor attached, of course, here in town as the Suns are taking on the Utah Jazz. All right, we'll do more football. 5 o'clock hour, the drive today is powered by Larry H. Miller and Draper, the Ford King, Utah's #1 volume Ford dealer, and they'll beat any trade-in price in town by $750 anytime, any day. Find them online at lhmforddraper.com. Busy night of NBA hoops as the NBA League Cup is here. Jazz in action tonight, taking on the Phoenix Suns. Going to head on down to the arena on this really cold, chilly, yet clear now, kind of. Clouds, no rain, no snow. Tuesday evening, so come on down there. Obviously, when it is football season, kind of waiting for Thursday to get rolling, so you get pro football back for a little week 11, which is crazy to think about. But fun show today, a lot going on. Certainly, you can hear the Coach Witt Coaches Show, Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show coming up on the other side, and then Utah men's basketball taking on Queens. Queens doing I think I'm supposed to say Queens stand up. Queensbridge, Ron Artest stand up. Queens doing the in-state tour. They're in Salt Lake today and in Provo tomorrow. I got to say, man, it feels like Bill just decided to give Sean the Coaches Show this week. Bill has to call the men's game tonight. Okay, so that's what's happening. But when Sean told me he was filling in for Riles tonight on the Coach Witt Coaches Show, it seemed like a very convenient week for Bill not to have to deal with what could be a very tired, frustrated, in his feels, as the kids would say, Coach Witt.
Right. Kyle is let's be clear, very good to us as far as the media goes, the interviews, all of the above. But I don't necessarily know that even though he's good to us, he enjoys that part of the gig. It's part of it. You get paid handsomely to do it. He understands and is a pro about it. But let's just say that if Kyle had his druthers, he would not be doing a coach's show tonight, right? Nor would he be doing one last week or the week before or next week or that's just kind of the MO there. So yeah, after a loss like that, and after the media circus around the loss afterwards, probably not the ideal thing for Kyle to be doing on a Tuesday night. But again, he'll come do the work and do the job, and of course get us ready for Colorado on a early Saturday morning.
So you'll hear Coach Witt, Sean O'Connell, and for Riles, Smith Snowden. Some other players are going to be joining the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show. Then after that, men's basketball taking on Queens. All right, Porter, before we get out of here, what comes our way on a Wednesday edition of the program?
On a Wednesday edition of The Drive, halfway through the work week spent, Zach Harper stops by for the NBA Daily Assist, as you've been talking about, the NBA Cup. Big story of the week.
Oof, man.
Is here. Neil Smith for Behind the Glass segment, of course. Each and every week we chat with the former Stanley Cup winner on the latest with the Utah Hockey Club and the NHL. Chris Kamrani is actually going to join us in studio tomorrow because he is out of pocket later in the week. So we'll wrap it up there and actually do some sports court on a Wednesday as well. We're kind of shuffling things around for a few schedules on this Wednesday.
Adapt or die, Porter.
Exactly.
Adapt or die.
You do.
We'll do that on a Wednesday show. With that, we'll say goodnight. Special thank you today, Tim McMahon, Max Chadwick, Lynn Roberts, JP, John Paul Chunga for any of the sound you may have missed from the show. The website's an option, which is ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. That's how I listen to our station. ESPN 700 app. That's available in the App Store or the Google Play Store as well. Finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, check out our podcast page. We call that The Drive with Spence Checketts. That's available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments. Give us all the stars. It actually helps. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying goodnight. Enjoy your Tuesday evening. We'll talk to you on a Wednesday show right here